Thank you. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. It's the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about. And how do we start off this show? As you know them, you love them, you got to have them. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way so the roommates and everybody else doesn't complain. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. On tonight's show, we'll have the Sage of Tampa Bay, Mr. Ira Kaufman of Joe Bucs fan, coming on here in just a couple minutes. Of course, we will have the legend himself, Mr. Leo Haggerty, former Coach Scout and now media member of Night Sports Productions and Amped Up Sports. At 8:30, we will have the Bush himself, Mr. L. Bushman of the Rays Rewind podcast. At 9 o'clock, we'll have Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast, of course, of the Bubba Radio Network, the BRN. My former CSB brother doing some big things. Love to have him back here on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. And then at 9:30, we will have KNN herself, the return of Kelsey, Nicole Nelson, a big-time trade by the Washington Commanders getting Deebo Samuel. We'll talk about what the mood is there in the DMC. And as always, we'll take your phone calls because, you know, we could sit here and talk to each other, but we like to talk to you, Bucs fans. 727-255-0391. It's 727-255-0391 on a Monday night edition at 8 o'clock. And of course, if you don't know, 8 p.m. is the new starting time now on Monday. And of course, Wednesday nights on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. And a lot of people said, I don't know if you're going to be able to do this, but the shows are going to continue to get better and better and better. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun as free agency is only 9 days away. I said free agency is only 9 days away. You guys thought season of football is over with, but it's never over here on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television, the Sports Web. Once again, I'm your Rolex reporter, Peter Blake, giving you something to think about. So all eyes are on Tampa Bay. What will they do? Will they be big-time spenders? What is Chris Godwin in that situation going to come to? Will they get him signed? A report yesterday from ESPN looks like they may get him signed. They're looking, both sides look like they want it to happen. So we'll see if it happens, of course. The good news is Deebo Samuel traded to the Washington Commanders. My co-host here, Leo Haggerty, suggested that Godwin may go there. So that option is now out. The bad news is, as my co-host also said, if T. Higgins gets franchised, which he did today, which means now Godwin is the top wide receiver in free agency if he's able to get out there in the market. So the Bucs have until March 12th. Again, we will keep you updated on this situation. Of course, when it comes to Levante David, some other reports out there. We'll talk about your Tampa Bay Rays as they won today versus the Atlanta Braves 5-4 and walk-off. Your Tampa Bay Lightning on a hot streak right now, playing the Florida Panthers. I know I got to talk some hockey here on this show. And as always, let's go ahead and go out to the comments really quick here, and then we'll get out to Mr. Leo Haggerty and hopefully get out to the Sage of Tampa Bay, Mr. Ira Kaufman. Always enjoy when he's on here. Also, I don't know if you know this, but John Gruden is being reinstated into the Ring of Honor. So you can give our thoughts on that situation. Darius Slay gone from the Philadelphia Eagles, a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Mr. Gerald McCoy, doing a recruiting effort there with Jason Light on Twitter. So we'll get into that also. So Sitton says, go Bucs. So let's go out to go Bucs. Let's go! Go Bucs. How about them Bucs, baby? Go Bucs. There we go. Let's go out to KR. Hey, Peter, first and go Bucs. Go Bucs. KR says there. And of course, Facebook stars are open. Friend me on Facebook at Peter H. Blake. Also, YouTube Super Chats. Like and subscribe to the Evolution of Sports Talk Television. Hopefully, Godwin comes back to the Bucs, but seeing Higgins get tagged makes things interesting. Also, get pass rushers, please. KR, we got chaos next week with all the free agents. You know what? I may just take off. I may just say, you know what? And a lot of people think I took off today because once again, I had another terrible day. You Mondays, Manic Mondays. Boy, I wish it was a Sunday. That's my fun day. You guys know that song? I'm aging myself there from the 80s and 90s. I'm not about to sing to you. So absolutely chaos next week when it comes to free agency. KR always on it. Let's go out to Mr. Dave Anglin. Other than the Jags, who can now be in competition for Godwin, Washington, Cincinnati are set at wide receiver. Of course, Pittsburgh has been talked about. The Raiders with John Spytek now, the general manager, Carolina. I mean, who wants to go to Carolina if they overpay him? I guess. I mean, the market is kind of set now with T. Higgins getting $26 million, but that is really the issue at this point with Godwin coming off a major injury. Will he be healthy? Jason Light had those comments last week. So we'll see how it plays out. Gruden should have been never taken out of the Ring of Honor. And Christopher Cole, hey, Peter, I made it tonight. Let's go, Bucs. Go, Bucs. Cubs and Lightning and WWE. And, of course, John Cena turns heel. We can all talk about that tonight if you want to. Open phone lines once again, but we're going to get our guest on. 727-255-0391. It's 727-255-0391. 0391. So let's go out to our guest here. Let's go out to the legend himself, former Coach Scout and now media member of Night Sports Productions and Amped Up Sports. Here we go.
Book him, Dano.
Book him, Dano, right there. Let's go out to Mr. Leo Haggerty, former Coach Scout and now media member of Night Sports Productions. My friend, how are you doing on this Monday night of the evolution of sports television?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. The Lightning are 0-0 in the second quarter. T. Higgins set the bar at $26 million for wide receivers. And somebody asked, where would Godwin go? I can name you 30 teams that are going to overpay for this guy right now. That's the problem, Peter. You hit the nail on the head.
Well, I try to hit the nail on the head, and hopefully the Bucs are the hammer that hits that nail on the head before the free agency bell starts. How do you like that transition? With that being said, let's go out to the sage of Tampa Bay. Always enjoy when he's on the sports web, a Joe Bucs fan. Mr. Ira Kaufman right there, the Hall of Fame gatekeeper. Welcome to the evolution, my friend. How you doing tonight?
Gentlemen, let's talk about the Academy Awards, who got snubbed, who had the best dress on, and I'm ready to go because you know what? I think I've seen two out of these 10 movies, and you know what I say about Honora? Goodbye, Honora. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
Exactly. It's Nora, right, Ira?
I think it's about a sex worker, and she gets involved with the Russian mafia. And it's shot in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. And gentlemen, when I was 16, my family moved, and we were 3 blocks from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. And I had a guy named Boris who would try to beat me up every other day. So I know what goes on in Brighton Beach.
Yeah. Hey, Ira, when you talk about snubs, I'm going to ask you the first question. I truly thought Luke Kuechly was a shoo-in, and he didn't make it. Talk to me why.
Well, first of all, gentlemen, it was the smallest hall class in 20 years. In 20 years. And it kind of goes against the trend that was going on where we were trying to get more seniors in. And this year you look around and it's only one senior, Sterling Sharp, and only 3 modern-day players instead of the usual 5. And Kuechly got caught in the crosshairs because, Leo, and you're not going to like it, but it is the truth, some voters, more than a few, are very, very reticent to put in first-year eligible guys and let them jump the queue for people that have been waiting, like Jared Allen, Eric Allen, and all of a sudden here comes Manning, and here comes Kuechly, and here comes Marshall Yanda, and here comes Terrell Suggs, and here comes Vinatieri. I mean, that's 5 first-year eligibles, and none of them made it, guys. None of them made it. And speaking of Eli Manning, he might have a little bit of a wait, Peter, because next year comes Drew Brees. Then we got Roethlisberger on deck and Mr. Brady waiting in the wings. Eli Manning might have a little bit of a wait here, Peter.
Well, I'm going to go out to you, Ira. Do you feel like he is a Hall of Famer? Because a lot of people say his numbers aren't up there with a lot of the quarterbacks, but he did beat Brady in those 2 Super Bowls. In your opinion, does Eli deserve recognition as a
I'm going to go on record right here with you guys. I'm a body of work guy. That's why, I was sure that Rondé Barber was going to get his gold jacket. The body of work. I mean, 16 years, great player for most of those years. And you can't say that about Eli Manning, guys. You just can't do it. He had Hall of Fame postseason runs, 2 of them. Very impressive. Not just the Super Bowl. They went into Dallas. Dallas was the number 1 seed. One of those years, they beat them. They went into Green Bay, number 1 seed. They beat them. So it's not just the Super Bowls. However, I was at both games against the Patriots. And I got to tell you, especially the first one, 2016, a team that probably would have been recognized as the greatest team in NFL history had the Patriots won that game. But Leo, am I wrong to suggest the Giants defense was the real star of the game and not Eli Manning, who, he played well, but the final score was 21-17. It wasn't 38-34, but he got the MVP because quarterbacks get the MVP. And without those 2 MVPs, I don't even think we're talking about that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think in both Super Bowls, the Giants defense was the story, period.
Yeah.
They got after Brady like no other team did. And I mentioned this to you, and I mentioned it to Peter. I said, Eli Manning has a very short resume, but that thing at the top, winning 2 Super Bowls against the GOAT, has to carry a lot of weight. So
there's no question.
I think he gets in, but I don't think he gets in for a while.
It could be 6-7 years, Peter. Quarterbacks are coming down the line.
Yeah.
And, for example, next year, all right, class of 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes Drew Brees. Here comes Larry Fitzgerald. Now, there's a logjam at wide receiver. Torrey Holt's been waiting. Reggie Wayne's been waiting. Little Steve Smith's been waiting a couple of years. Here comes Larry Fitzgerald. Well, Pete, he's going to jump the queue. I mean, he's Larry Fitzgerald. The same thing with Drew Brees. He's going to jump the queue. It's Drew Brees. And Peter, I don't care, even the most ardent New York Giant fan in the world is not going to sit there and tell me that Eli Manning's had a better career than Drew Brees. I don't want to hear it.
No.
I think that'd be ridiculous to even suggest that. Now, Brees only has 1 Super Bowl. Fine. I'm not going to hold that against Drew Brees. They weren't good enough.
No.
However, and Leo knows this better than anybody, year after year after year, that combination of Brees and Sean Payton, they had a top 5 offense, a top 3 offense, a top 1 offense. I mean, every freaking year for 15 years. You can't say that about Eli Manning. And Drew Brees was the guy at the controls. I just think the guy is going to sail in, and I don't want to hear one word from the Eli Manning people.
Well, and I'll tell you right now, a lot of people would say Mike Evans is first ballot with his body of work. And then Levante David, there's been some discussion and some debate. I want to talk about that, and then we'll get on what the Bucs could be doing this year with Godwin. But Levante David, Mike Evans, sure Hall of Famers in your opinion?
I don't think there's any question that Evans is going to wear a gold jacket. Now, for people that say he's a slam dunk, and you say the words Mike Evans and you sit down and you don't make a speech for him because he's on a level with Jerry Rice and Barry Sanders, and Dan Marino and Tom Brady, that's a lot of nonsense. I mean, Marvin Harrison had to wait. He had to wait 3 years. That's what happens in that room, unless you're Jerry Rice. The numbers the last 10, 15, 20 years are very skewed in terms of wide receivers. Leo, 1,000-yard season doesn't mean what it meant in 1985. You know that. It doesn't. And there's more games now. So while I'm not questioning whether Mike Evans is going to get into Canton, he is. This idea that he's going to sail in on his first year of eligibility, that's not the way it works, Leo. I've been doing this for 20 years in that room. They're very hesitant. You have to get in that first year eligibility. You got to be the best of the best And most years, Evans was like the 5th best receiver in the league. He wasn't number 1 or number 2. So he's going to get in, but I don't think he gets in year 1. I don't.
You know what, Ira? I don't think Levante David is even in the conversation. I mean, good football player for the Buccaneers, but when you say linebackers, his name doesn't come to the forefront. And nothing against Levante David. He's just playing in a league that has some really great linebackers. I mean, Levante David, Luke Kuechly. I don't think there's even a combination. There's no comparison. That's just me.
Well, I would say this, Ira, when you say that Levante David and his numbers in his era are comparable, if you will, to Barry Wagner and, of course, Kuechly.
Up to a point, Peter. Up to a point. And I'll tell you what counts more than stats. And by the way, you're right. By the time David retires, even right now, he's, top 5, top 6 in career tackles. He is. Now, they didn't always keep track of tackles, maybe since 1980 or something. So we don't have that for the guys that played before that. But don't forget, guys, the guy in that room that's representing Pittsburgh and the guy in that room that's representing Los Angeles, they didn't see Levante David like we did. We're a little spoiled. And, yeah, he was a heck of a player. But, Peter, to your point about the stats, he's got stats, but he doesn't have hardware. Hardware counts more. So when he was a contemporary of Kuechly's, in the 2010s, Kuechly was getting Defensive Player of the Year. Kuechly was getting first-team All-Pro, and Levante David was not. Same thing with Wagner. Very much a contemporary. Wagner, All-Pro, All-Pro, All-Pro. And for whatever reason, and let's be honest, the Bucs were lousy for a good part of Levante David's tenure in Tampa. Correct. Not the last few years, but before that. They were lousy. They didn't get on primetime games. And you ask some guy in the street, in Phoenix, Arizona about Levante David, the guy's going to say, who? Who are you talking about? They don't know. They just don't know.
Well, they know this guy right here. He's a sage of Tampa Bay. It's Ira Kaufman, a Joe Bucs fan. Of course, it's Leo Haggerty, former Coach Scout and now media member. And, of course, I'm your host, Peter Blake of the Sports Web on a Monday night. Let's go and let's talk about Chris Godwin because all eyes in Tampa Bay right now are on this situation. It certainly seems like both sides want to come together. It seems like also there's going to be a market because T. Higgins, Ira, gets franchised today, $26 million. So how do you see this Godwin situation working out?
Well, I think, Leo, the hesitance, and I think there is some hesitance from a Buck perspective towards Chris Godwin. Not about him as a player. They know what he can do. He does all the dirty work. And by the way, Leo, when he got hurt last year, he might have been the best receiver in football at that point. He was that good. For some reason, he was much better yards after the catch than he had ever been last year before he got hurt. On the other hand, Leo, they played the final 10 regular season games and the playoff game without him, and they still ended up averaging almost 30 points a game. So you could look at it that way. I think the hesitance is the health issue. And the Bucs have to be reassured, Leo, that he's good to go. Now, if he's not good to go until mid-September, I'm okay with that. But I'm talking about you can't let him miss half the season and pay the guy, $20 million. There's a little hesitance there. The good news for Buck fans is no team knows Chris Godwin's health status better than the Bucs do. No team knows it better. They got him, they know exactly what he's doing with his routines and his rehab. And other teams are on the outside looking in. It would be great to have him back, Leo. Be great to have him back. But, with the emergence of McMillan, and Evans is going to play another couple of years, I don't think it's an easy decision. But in some crazy way, I think the injury actually helps the Bucs in terms of limiting the suitors on the market and how much they're willing to pay for them.
You know what, Ira? When you look at what the Bucs have, and you bring up a great point, 10 games without him, they're still scoring 30 a game. do the Bucs mortgage the future by signing Godwin to a big contract as opposed to going after that edge rusher that may be out there?
Well, in my opinion, if I have to choose between the two positions, and I can just see Peter Blake shaking his head in agreement, that's a no-brainer. You got to get an edge rusher somehow, some way. Now, on my podcast, it has been suggested that the Bucs don't care about edge rushers. You can't say that. I don't agree with that. It's not like they haven't drafted some. You got Shoyinka. You got Logan Hall, if you want to call him that. And then you got Braswell. So, Peter, you can't say they don't care about it.
Right.
The problem is that Jason Light hasn't been, very adept at finding the right ones. They just haven't. Somehow, some way, they always end up with 45 sacks. I mean, whatever happens, they got 45 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of having, a couple of double-digit sackers like Shaq Barrett and JPP, now they got 5 guys with 5 or 6 sacks. That they're spreading the wealth. That's the way they're doing it right now. Kelsey, Vea, Levante gets his. Nelson gets his. Logan Hall got 5. That's the way they're doing it. That's not the way Bowles wants to do it. He wants a force off the edge. He wants to rush 4 and then blitz when he wants, and out of creativity and not out of necessity. And I'll tell you what, if they can get this rush going, and they can't do it with the current roster, Pete, that's not good enough.
No.
They got to get somebody in free agency, or God forbid somebody falls to them at 19, or a trade. You're going to see this secondary look a hell of a lot better with a consistent pass rush than what we saw out there last year.
You had hold on, Leo. You had Todd Bowles on. You had Jason Light on. Ira. I always said trade for Myles Garrett at this point. Make that trade. I get it. You're going to have to give up 2 first-round picks, but it's a Simeon Rice move where that championship window is open. Maybe trade for Trey Hendrickson. It won't cost as much. But it certainly seems like you talking to him on the Ira Kaufman podcast, again, on Joe Bucs fan, it doesn't necessarily seem like that's where they're going to go. Is that the sense you get with Myles Garrett and making a trade for an edge rusher where it's worked in the past, albeit you trade a 3rd-round pick for JPP, you go out in free agency and get a Shacker, you go out in free agency and get an Ndamukong Suh?
Well, you're talking a whole different can of worms there, Pete, with a Myles Garrett. Leo, you know Jason Light. You know his history. You know his inclinations. He doesn't like giving up draft picks. He likes to hoard draft picks, Leo. And we got to be fair to Jason Light. His drafting's a hell of a lot better in the last 5 or 6 years than it was his first 5 years. I mean, a hell of a lot better. He's landed some really top-notch guys. Winfield, Bucky Irving, Kelsey, Wirfs. He's hit on a lot of guys, but not edge rushers, and I can't count on Braswell. So I understand Peter's point, Leo, but to give up 2 first-round picks, now look, he's 30 years old, he's in his prime. He's not 34 like Khalil Mack. And I don't have any questions about Myles Garrett as a football player. He's elite. He's on a Hall of Fame track. So, Leo, you got to ask yourself, where is the franchise? Well, Jason Light said last week in Indy that the Bucs are an ascending franchise. I think he's right. Leo, I think he's right. They've won 1 more game each of the last 2 years than the year before. They played Washington tough. Washington turned out to have a hell of a football team. They went into Detroit the next week and did a job on the Lions. And then, they self-destructed against Philadelphia. But, the Eagles were the best team in football this year. So I think Myles Garrett could make a huge difference. But, Pete, to answer your question directly, it's not in Light's nature to give up premium picks like that. He'd be going against his own nature. And I think the deciding factor, Leo, could be the Glazers. When they're looking for a quarterback, when they're looking for a coach, the Glazers stepped in. Now they're looking at a Myles Garrett. I think the Glazers are going to be on the leading edge of what they do there. If the Glazers want this thing to happen, Light will get it done. And if it doesn't work out, it's on the Glazers. So I think they're going to play a critical role in this.
Ira, I'm going to throw this out to you. It's a copycat league. We know that. And who are you copying right now? The Philadelphia Eagles, because they won the Super Bowl. What did they do to basically make Kansas City look like a bottom-level football team? Well, they got two guys in the middle that can collapse the pocket in Davis and Carter. The Bucs got one with Vita Vea. He's a man-child. The second thing they had was edge rushers that could come hard. But the Eagles play a 4-3. Do you think because it's a 3-4 scheme that whoever that other edge rusher is has to be basically a pseudo edge rusher because they're going to have to go back in coverage a lot?
Well, I don't know how Peter feels about it, but it drives us crazy, Joe Bucs fan, to see guys dropping into coverage when they're supposed to be rushed, putting the quarterback on their ass. Peter, that's why they're getting paid. They're not getting paid to sit in the flat over there. And you guys remember that one of the key plays against the Commanders in the playoff game was the back went out into the left flat, and he had Yaya Diaby on him. And Diaby did the best he could. He was fairly close to the guy, but the guy beat him around the edge. And, he caught the ball, and he ran for 20 yards. That's an example. It's driving Buck fans crazy, dropping it into coverage. They get Myles Garrett, Pete. He ain't dropping into the flat. I can tell you that right now.
Right. You're not going to drop him into the flat, Ira, because basically I think the reason why Bowles does that, and he confirmed this, I believe, on your podcast or, in the media meeting last week in Indy, the reason why he does that is because he's not getting enough pressure. He's hindered or he's limited. And he's had at linebacker. He wants to get more pressure with the four-man front, but he hasn't been able to. It's not consistent enough. So that's why he does some of those variations and some of those zones to confuse the quarterback. With that being said, the report was put out there yesterday from Khalil Mack. Now, what we learned from Joe Buxman and John Spytek when you guys sat down with him is that they were actually interested in Khalil Mack at a certain point, and then he got traded to the Chicago Bears. 32 years old, 2 years removed, 17 sacks, had 6.5 sacks with the Chargers. Is this somebody you would like to see the Bucs put the tires on, or possibly, like Leo said from the Philadelphia Eagles, Josh Sweat?
I think, Leo, with Sweat, I've been doing a little research on him. Good player. Benefits from a lot of good players around him in Philly. He does. I think he had 11 sacks a few years ago, 8 last year. He's in his prime. He's 27. Those are the positives. Good player. But, Leo, he's got some kind of health history, maybe in college and even in high school, where there might be some concerns about Sweat. I don't think he's going to break the bank. But I'm looking at Khalil Mack. Leo, if you can get him for 1 year, a 1-year deal, prove it year, bounce back, because he wasn't great last year. He had 6 sacks. And he's durable. He doesn't miss a lot of games. And there might be a little something left in Khalil Mack's tank. And, Leo, the Bucs aren't going to be the only team looking at Mack, but he's 34. Leo, I can't give him a multi-year commitment. I mean, come on. 34, most guys are breaking down at that position. They are. They're breaking down. And he's kind of intriguing, Leo. Here's one positive. If you can address this with a trade or signing a Mack or Sweat in free agency, Leo, it opens up the whole draft for you. And you don't go in, in the famous words of Bill Parcells, don't go to the grocery when you're hungry. Don't go to the supermarket when you're hungry. Parcells comes up with those great lines. I think I should be the one that picks the vegetables and everything for the dinner as the head coach. And Leo, if they don't address it in free agency or make a trade, they're going to be desperate, and that's when you make mistakes, Leo, in the draft. That's when O.J. Howard, you're wowed by O.J. Howard. Well, he wasn't a football player. He wasn't deserving of that pick. I think it might have been the same damn 19th pick. And remember, they could have had They could have had the running back from Florida State. Who am I missing here?
Alvin Cook. Alvin Cook.
That's right.
The whole media, listen, I still get upset about this because what could have been Ira and Leo if you drafted Cook? But the rumor was that Cook was in trouble here in the state of Florida, and they were wary of drafting him. But listen, if you put Cook with the running game that she had at that point with Doug Martin, and we all know that Doug Martin was going out, you get Cook and Jameis Winston, that takes the pressure off of Winston. You don't throw the ball that much. It's neither here nor there. But I remember the media shouting at the rooftops, and you guys were like, draft Alvin Cook. I was like, draft Alvin Cook. I don't know what you guys are thinking. And you draft a friggin' tight end and O.J. Howard. And I never pick.
And guys, I'll tell you the guy that I think's got a bullseye on him right now with the Bucs. And I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think he's going to make the 2025 roster. If I bet, I think Jamel Dean's had it. I think that's enough with Jamel Dean, in my opinion. Leo, is he going to learn ball skills at this age? After all these years in the league, is he suddenly going to have ball skills? The guy doesn't have any hands. I think an interception fell into him last year. That was his first one in like 30 games. 30 games, Leo. And he gets hurt a lot. I think they got to move on from Jamel Dean. I wouldn't be surprised if they can take care of this edge rusher in the next month. I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a corner. They're certainly going to draft one with a premium pick. May not be the first round, but I want another corner next to McCollum. I just don't trust Dean.
When you look at what's going on with the Bucs, I don't care who you got in the secondary. No pass rush means you're getting burned back there.
That's a fair point, Leo. A fair point.
So let me ask you the $64 million question. When are you going to have Peter, myself, on the Joe Bucs fan show on WDAE? We're waiting. When's it going to happen?
I got to talk to my boys. I always like seeing Blake up in that Buck press box. He's always got a pretzel in his mouth. He's got ice cream. He's got something going on over there, sitting next to J.P. Peterson, coach. And we got to get you back in the Buck press box too. So I'm going to go out there and vouch for you.
I'll get me on the Joe Bucs fan so I can go to them and say I got credibility. I got some skin in the game.
Maybe I can get John Gruden to say some nice things about Julio. He's back in the good graces.
You know what, Ira? While we're on that point, putting him back in the Ring of Honor, big mistake. That's just me. Big mistake.
Well, I'm with Peter here. I don't think they should have took him out in the first place. That's a big time move to take him out of the Ring of Honor. Now,
what you did is a big time mistake.
To be fair, Pete, he did say some things about, I think it was Brian Glazer. He did.
Yeah.
Not just, the head of the Players Association, not just Roger Goodell. He took a shot at a Buck co-owner. He did. And that's tough to get over. But, Leo, I think what's part of this whole thing is this is the 50th year of Buck football. And the Glazers are very into making this a historical season. There's a documentary coming out. I don't know if you guys know about this. I sat down for 5 hours in a chair to talk about the Bucs from 1985 on. When I came to town, they talked to about 50 people. When they wanted to talk to John Lynch, they flew out to California. When they wanted to talk to McKay, they flew to Atlanta. All financed by the Glazers. This is a Glazer, originated project. They're into it, and they're going to play this movie at a Tampa theater this summer. And so it's all about the history of this franchise, which has been very uneven, Pete. Very uneven. There's been a lot of bad years.
Yep.
And that's why I say that. I think these are the glory days, I think, for Bucs fans right now. A Super Bowl in the rearview mirror. They're relevant, and there's no reason to think they're going to fall on their butts this season. So this is a good time if you're a Buck fan.
Ira, I've got to ask you one question before we get off of here.
Yes.
What was the most satisfying, and I think I know the answer, but I need people to hear this. What were the one or two most satisfying moments you had of getting somebody in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I've made six successful presentations since 2011. I don't think anybody's made more in that span than I have. So I've been in that room and been very active. One year I made 3 different speeches for 3 different candidates who made the final 15. I think it was Dungy, Lynch, and Brooks, I think, that one year. But anyway, to answer your question, Pete, it was my very first one. The very first one, 2011. There's a guy by the name of Ed Sable. People said, Ed who? I don't remember him as a player. Well, he wasn't a player. But Coach knows this better than anybody. He was the founder of NFL Films. And for a few years before that, I was asking guys in the room, hey, how come we never talk about Ed Sable? How come he's never a finalist? Well, in 2011, he became a finalist. Now, Leo, the problem was back then they didn't have a separate category for a contributor or a coach. He had to go in there in the final 15 finalists with players. And it's very hard for a contributor type to beat out players. It's just hard. You know, they're going to lean towards players, the voters. And I understand that. I had one chance, Peter. The guy was 95 years old. Ed Sable, founder of NFL Films, and then his son, Steve Sable, did a great job with NFL Films also. But this was to honor Ed Sable. I had one chance. And I think Leo knows this story, Pete, but I'll tell it to you.
Yeah.
We were in Dallas. That was the year that Jerry Stadium opened. So it was 2011. And I had never met Ed Sable. I had never met Steve Sable, but I knew what NFL Films meant to the league. So it was in Dallas. And, you know, during the week, I'm there all week for the Super Bowl. And I saw that John Madden, like on a Thursday, because the meeting was going to be the day before the Super Bowl, Saturday morning. It was an all-day meeting. Now they do it differently. Now they do it in mid-January on a Zoom call. Well, back then it was in person on the day before in the Super Bowl city, and you had to be there. So John Madden was giving out some kind of Madden Award on Thursday of that week, you know, in one of the ballrooms. So I went over there. And I waited till he finished what he was doing. And I went up to him and he goes, what's up? And I said, John, I'm making the presentation for Ed Sable in 2 days. Is there anything you want to say about him? Can you help me? Because your word has a lot of clout in that room. You know, certain guys, you bring them what they say into the room, you got everybody's attention. And the same story with Bill Belichick helped me with Warren Sapp. So I told John Madden what I was doing, and he said, I had my tape recorder there. He goes, Ira, what's the NFL except for its history? We have no history without Ed Sable. Well, you can't ask for better than that, Pete. So I think I ended the speech with that. And also, and Leo loves this story, you know, you got to have a little fun in that room, too. You got to have a little fun. A little humor goes a long way. So I came up with this story, Peter, to exemplify the power of NFL Films, especially in the 70s when I grew up. And I made up a girlfriend. I gave her a fictional name. And I said to everybody in the room, I said, by the way, this is in the middle of my speech. I said, by the way, I have every reason to be pissed off at Ed Sable. That got everybody's attention. I said, just imagine this scenario. It's 1971, and I'm 16 years old. And instead of going out on a Saturday night with Muriel Berkowitz, I'm watching the game of the week between the Redskins and the Cowboys on my television at 7:30 at night. I said, Ed Sable stunted my social life, but he belongs in the Hall. And a couple hours later, he had a gold jacket. Now, Pete, here's the end of the story. Makes it even better. The next day was the Super Bowl. The game was going to start about 5:30 Dallas time. I get to the stadium about 2 o'clock, 2:30. I get out of the elevator with my work bag. I had never met Steve Sable. And Ed Sable was too sick to show up in Dallas. He wasn't there when they introduced people on the field. He couldn't make it for health reasons. I got out of the elevator and I see Steve Sable. I recognized who he was. I had never met him. He was talking to another guy. And as I got out of the elevator, the other guy said to Steve Sable, "That's the guy. That's the guy who made the speech for your father yesterday." Mm. Well, Steve Sable starts walking towards me. I hadn't even put my work bag down. I haven't gotten to my seat yet. Before he even gets to me, he's crying. He's crying. He puts his arms around me like an octopus. And he goes, "Ira, you have no idea what you did yesterday. You have no idea what it meant, what it means to my family, to my father. You know, when I called him, he's crying on the phone. And now Steve Sable's crying on my shoulder." That was the great moment, Pete. That was the great moment. Getting a 95-year-old guy in my very first presentation. So, you know, there's hope for you, Blake. You might show up on the ballot in 2035, and I'll do my best, Pete.
Hey, I'll take it. Listen, if I got Ira Kaufman out there selling the sports web, the evolution of sports talk television, just saying a Rolex reporter right there, I think we're going to be in the Hall of Fame any day now.
Leo, I should be selling aluminum siding, Leo. In another life, I should have sold aluminum siding. You know?
Julian Berkowitz story is just, you can't make that up. But the best part for me was when you and I sat down and you were saying, "What do I need to say? What do I need to say?" And I said to you, every major sports entity would love to have NFL films.
That's right.
And you told me you put that in your presentation, and I was happy to hear that. But for Ed Sable to get in again, a Jersey guy, out of NFL Films used to be on Friendship Road in Morristown. Now it's over at Bristol Place and is just a campus. But the fact that you got that guy in, and then that was just a phenomenal feat. And again, I bow to the master on that one.
Thanks. And Pete, the tragedy is Steve Sable passed away before his father did. Steve Sable passed away, I think, brain cancer. And he's got his own bust in Canton, and deservedly so. Yes, he does.
Well, I will say this. I'll share this story, and then I'll let you go, Ira Kaufman, Sage of Tampa Bay. I will never forget you because you did one of my last shows with my father. He was on that, and of course, he dealt with cancer. He actually passed away from brain and lung cancer. I'll never forget it. It was December 24th of 2016 when the Bucs were in the hunt. You didn't have to do it, and I really appreciate it because let me tell you something. My father at the time was a huge Ira Kaufman fan, and we are big fans here on the Sports Web. We appreciate the time, as always, Ira Kaufman.
Hold on, Peter. I got one more Ira. Quick answer.
Yes.
Ban it or not? I'm saying no way.
Which guy, Leo?
Push. Ban it or not? I'm saying no. What do you say?
I say nobody would be pissed off if they could do it as good as the Philadelphia Eagles. Go stop it. Hey, there's got to be a way.
Practice better and play harder, right?
Pete, I'll see you down the line. Much appreciated, guys.
All right,
yes.
Hey, I'm waiting for that fight with Joe Bucs, fan. Talk to the boys.
I will. Take care, guys.
All right, there you go. The Sage of Tampa Bay, Mr. Ira Kaufman, Leo Haggerty. Thanks a lot for your time. I know we got to bring in the left-hander. We got L. Bushman, but we'll see you on Wednesday night, my friend, okay?
Absolutely. I'm going to reach out to Roy Cummings, see if we can jump him on. What do you think?
Sounds good, my friend. Let's stack up those guests here on the Evolution, all right?
Take care, brother. Bye now.
All right, there you go. I mean, how do you not like that? And I'm sorry to L. Bushman. I'm sorry to the Rays fans because I know you expect him, but you can't stop that story from the Sage. He's telling great stories. He's giving you football history. He's talking about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's talking about the Hall of Fame. He's talking about being a gatekeeper when it comes to what he has to do to sell that. I would have that all night long, those kind of stories here on the Sports Web. All right, let's go out to Mr. L. Bushman himself. making a return here of the Rays Rewind podcast. Mr. L. Bushman, try to follow that. Welcome to the evolution of sports talk television, my friend. How you doing? And I got no sound. All right.
I don't have stories like that. I can't follow that. I have no stories as epic as that. I can't do it. And that's why he's been in the business for a long time. So he's got stories like that. So
yeah. I mean,
I think the only story I have is covering the Rays for the Wild. I think the ALDS a few years ago at the Trop when they played Houston and finding out that Justin Verlander was a dick, and that's pretty much it. So
why is Justin Verlander a D? Go ahead and explain that.
I would say just the pompous attitude. I mean, I get it. He's a star pitcher. He's been in the league for a while, but he's kind of a dick. So
yeah.
And he played for Houston. So I mean,
well, as one of our colleagues would say off of Fox Sports, Ben Mahler, the Astros, because they're a bunch of cheaters, ass being the key term when it comes to Houston's team, they're banging on a trash can. And, you know, you look at the Trop, and we're kind of start out there with the stadium situation. But your thoughts on the Trop there? Of course, I got a picture in the background. Believe it or not, that had some water damage from the 2 hurricanes, and it's still standing. Of course, now the Trop is not. The roof is off. I mean, what was your thought process on that whole situation with the Trop?
Believe it or not, I have the same photo too. I have that same photo. I don't know, man. We touched upon it our last show on the Rays Rewind podcast, which you can find us at the sickest. At the Rays Rewind, the sickest podcast on all the land on the Sick Podcast Network. We touched upon it for the very first time in months because myself and my co-host Drew, we've kind of made a pact. We don't really talk about the stadium situation because it's been just an ongoing broken record, and what we've had to witness between the Pinellas County Commissioners and the Rays front office going back and forth like a bunch of children that need to bicker with each other about who stole whose lunch money. I don't know. It's just it's an ongoing thing where I think we all just need an end game to it at this point. And I think we're 17 days away, or actually no, 27 days away or something like that from the actual deadline, which is the end of this month, where they've got to make a decision on their end of the bargain of getting the bonds, come over to them. I mean, their deadline is the 31st of this month. So, the rumors that are flying around, of course, our good friend JP Peterson saying, there's a Tampa group in place that's going to buy the Rays. It's at this point, it's like, just do something. That meme where the stick figure that's just poking something, just saying, let's just do something. Like, just do something. Like, I think we're all to the point of, if there's a group that's ready to buy, fantastic. If the Rays are going to hold up their end of the bargain, just get it done. That way we're not all in suspense yet again for something to happen for the stadium. I think it's comical that, and I respect the Rays front office to a T. I think, and I respect the Pinellas County Commissioners because, they're in these positions to make these types of decisions, but they are a group on both sides, some of the smartest dumb people in the world when it comes to these types of things, and the ongoing bickering with them is just it's comical. So I think Chris Latvala has kind of put himself almost as a folk hero now for Rays fans by kind of turning turncoat or turning how do they say in the wrestling world is the good guys, he's the baby face now. I think
he's the baby face. Yeah,
he's the baby face now of this whole this drama. So
yes, he's exposed the true heel.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've been talking about Stu, and people go, well, the Rays win, but they don't spend money. But it's a great story. It's such a great story every year that it feels like a superhero movie. You're doing the thing over and over again. I want you to finish the story, going back to a wrestling storyline. And he's been exposed as a heel. And hopefully Rob Manfred has, listened to the fan base, and he's had enough of Stu and him saving. I don't know who saves more money. Is it Stu Sternberg or Hugh Culverhouse? And I was around for both at this point. And I think the reason why so many people hate Stu is because the Rays could be so much more. They're so talented. And if you would spend $100 to 115, 120 million dollars when it comes to payroll, or 15th in baseball, you may have a chance to win a couple World Series championships, Al Bushman. We continue to talk about it, and it's always, well, you got to go here, going to go here, going to go with the sister city plan. I want to see this done. I want Rob Manfred to step in for Major League Baseball and say, we're taking the team away from you. We're selling it to a Tampa group. Who gives a damn? Take your money, go be a Mets fan, and go to hell.
Yeah, I think, you hit the nail right in the head. It's just like we've seen every single year. It's like the remake of the same movie each and every year. Like, it's the stadium drama. It's the stadium drama. And, I think we've talked about this on your show before. We've talked about it on my show before. It's just get it done. And if Rob Manfred has maybe stepped in, maybe they've done some dealings behind the scenes what they haven't told anybody about, where, the commissioner of baseball has maybe gone to Stu Sternberg and said, listen, enough is enough. Either get this done or we're probably going to force you out. Maybe that has happened and we just haven't heard about it yet. Mm-hmm. Or, maybe there is some truth to the reports that JP Peterson has come out with, that there is a Tampa group in place that are in negotiations right now. I think from what he was saying, that the only thing that's holding this up is Stu wants more than what the team is valued. Obviously he wants to come out big and cash out. I think he's trying to get $2 billion instead of, the actual value of the team, I think, is 1.2 right now. He's looking for 2. Look, meet in the middle, like go 1.5, 1.6, and just go back to New York and have somebody come in that's actually going to take care of this team, spend money to attract free agents that can come in and get the team over the hump. I mean, I think a lot of Rays fans are just like, look, we want to go back to the playoffs again, which we've done. Last year was kind of a fluke, but I think what the Rays fans in this area is, look, we want to just win one.
Yes.
Just win one, baby. That's that. I think that's what we're all to the point is like, look, we've been to almost to the mountaintop a bunch of times. We just want to win the crown. And, look, I think this Rays team coming in this year, and I spoke about this on our last show, was I think as the weeks go, weeks get closer to opening day, I have more confidence in this team than I did last year's team because of, everybody in the rotation is healthy right now, knock on wood. It's deep. The bullpen, despite what ESPN has been saying, is the bullpen is great. The bullpen is fully depth. They've got a lot of great arms in there too. I think the defense is going to be a lot better too with the guys that we have in place. And the trades that were done last year, I think, were necessary to have the guys that we have in place right now to go forward. I think the only question mark that a lot of Rays fans, and myself included, is, how is the lineup going to be? Do we have enough power? Do we have enough pop in the bats, to get us more than 2 runs per game, have us stay in contention and be in those games where, if we're playing the big dogs of the AL East and other teams in the league, is can we score more than 2 or 3 runs a game? Can we maybe score 6 or 7 and not have to worry about, our bullpen, gassing out too early because they've been used so much. So I think it's to the point of, okay. And everything's got to click. Look, the new guy's got to come in and produce. Junior Caminero has take that extra step and now be the star that we all thought Wander Franco was going to be until that hell messed with him. But, Junior's got to be the face of the franchise. The guys they picked up in free agency, Ha-Seong Kim is got to be the guy that, could be the everyday shortstop and have a lot of pop in his bat. Eloy Jimenez too as well. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say uncertainty about this team, but it's more like everything's got to click and everything's got to be together. That way we can make maybe a postseason run. I think right now the win total's 81.5. I think they can win. I think the magic number for them to be at least at a wild card spot or an AL East champion has got to be at least 94, 95 wins. And I think they can do that, but everybody's got to stay healthy and everything's got to line up together. The baseball gods have to be nice to the Rays this season to have everything all lined up together. I can't remember the last time the Rays had a full healthy rotation and, an offensive clicked at the same time. I mean, even when we went to the postseason in 2020, there were some injuries too. So everything has to line up together. It's going to be fun. I'm going to try and go to Steinbrenner Field, even though the ticket price is a little bit outrageous. But summer baseball and an outside open stadium is going to be interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, it's going to be a fun, interesting season. I told my co-host the other day, I was like, what more of a Rays thing is the Rays win the World Series by playing in somebody else's stadium? That's the most Tampa Bay Rays thing that could happen, is that. So,
do you think they have an advantage? And we're on with L. Bushman of the Rays Rewind podcast. I'm your host, Peter Blake of the Sports Web. Do you think they have an advantage playing in that small stadium? And I see Matthew there of Cannon Fire Podcast. We'll get you on in just a moment. Running just a little bit late, so just stay patient here. Great content coming on here on the Evolution. But do you think they have an advantage? And I go back to that pitching staff. That's the one thing I'm most excited about. 1 through 5, 1 through 6. If they can stay healthy, knock on wood, I think they pitch, can play defense. Yes, you still have to score runs, but we all know when you have that pitching and defense, when you have that Rays way, you could definitely win a lot of games. I said 92.
Okay.
You're Eli. Give me those questions, though, really quick. Advantage playing in a small ballpark there, pitching staff-wise, and then how many wins in your opinion?
I think definitely there is an advantage because, especially for the left-handed hitters, where, Steinbrenner Field is basically like Yankee Stadium 2.0. It has that small right field, which is very small. So, guys like Brandon Lau could expose that and hit some dingers over there too as well. So I think definitely there is an advantage there. They could definitely score a lot of runs and hit a lot of home runs. So I think there is definitely an advantage there too as well. Win total wise, I did bet the over, courtesy of Hard Rock Bets. So hopefully they'll get the over. I'm shooting for 93. I'll go 93.
Okay. Okay.
And what was the other question? Pitching?
Yeah, the pitching. For me, it's McClanahan. You got Pepio. You've got Taj Bradley. I feel like Bradley is on the cusp of something great, and he needed to figure out because he could never get through the 4th or 5th inning, and then he has that out pitch, and then he goes on a streak there, gets confidence, and then kind of comes back to earth. Yeah. Is Bradley the X factor for you? Baz, is he the X factor? Who's the X factor besides the obvious McClanahan?
I want to see as Pepio could be the X factor in the rotation. What's great about having what's great about having the depth that they do as a rotation. Now, I know they've said they're going with a 5-man rotation. They essentially could go with a 6-man rotation. That's how deep their pitching staff is. Mm-hmm. What's great about it is you can be so creative about where you're going to put these guys. Obviously, Shane McClanahan is going to be number 1. I could see Pepio as 2. And then when it comes to the 3, 4, 5 slot, you could be creative. You could have Bradley or Boz be 3 and 4. You could have Raz, who's going to be in the starting rotation this year, as maybe a 3 or 4 or 5. So those bottom half guys after Pepio and after McClanahan and Pepio, it's really creative of what they can be like. Bradley, I think, is this year coming in, I think this is the year he's got to turn the corner or turn the page to be, the guy that we thought he's going to be. I think we saw a flash of that last year in the first half where he was one of the most dominant pitchers in all of baseball until I think he just got overworked and he just got tired throughout the latter half of the season. I think this is the year where, he's going to take a step forward and turn that page to be another dominant pitcher in that rotation. It's really great to see, coming in. And once again, that we have a full healthy rotation, leading up to, opening day. And that's the great thing about it is, even if God forbid somebody goes down before the opening day, is like we have another. Oh, I forgot about Ryan Luttrell too. It's like, okay, you could have him in that rotation as well, or you put him in the bullpen. So it's like, hey, we've got starters available. Even if one guy goes down. And what's great about it is you could put Raz back in the bullpen to be that long inning guy if you wanted to. So I think with the rotation that they have, I believe that's where baseball's headed. I think with them in the rotation is, I think on paper is probably one of the most dominant pitching staffs that you have. What's great about this Rays team, I think, is they're very under the radar right now. I think a lot of people are kind of just like, hey, we're not going to pay attention to them. They're probably just going to be another 500 team like they were last year. Lots of question marks. ESPN saying our bullpen sucks, which they have no clue what they're talking about. So that's fine with me. Like, let them be under the radar. Let them be that team that really surprises the heck out of people. Do I want a strong first half like they did a couple of years ago? No, I'd rather have them do, stay competitive first half, and then that second half after the All-Star break, really turn the page and turn it on the afterburners and really have that strong second half leading into the postseason. So it's going to be a fun season. I'm so excited to see Junior Caminero. I mean, he hit 2 home runs today. So if that's a sign of things to come, it's going to be so fun to see him play. And if you have some autograph cards of him, if you got everybody out there, if you got some Junior Caminero cards, like have them graded PSA and hold on to those, because I think he's a star just waiting to happen because of the skill set he has. So it's going to be fun.
Is it too much to ask for him 20 to 30 home runs? Do you think that's certainly possible? Or
I think it's possible. I think it's definitely possible.
Okay.
I mean, and look, let's eclipse that. Let's go 30, 35. Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, because he can run and he's definitely athletic and he can hit for power. For me, Josh Lowe is the guy that really needs to step up in this lineup, and we've seen it, Al, when he's able to stay healthy. And again, that key word, stay healthy. He's got pop in his bat. He's deceptively fast on the base pads, even though he's big. And the Rays seem like they can definitely use that stolen base, that new rule to their advantage. They've been able to use that new rule to their advantage the last couple of years there. And then you also got Eloy Jimenez. What has he been able to do here? I know it's spring training early. Any signs that because he's got potential? He's got
potential. He's definitely. I mean, he's definitely. When he's going to be playing is. I know Jonathan Aranda is going to be penciled in as the DH, but I think when Eloy comes up, who's signed a minor league contract with the Rays, you can have him as your other DH. So if he's healthy, he could give you 25 to 30 home runs when he's healthy. And he hasn't played more than 100 games the past couple seasons because of injuries. Now he's a little bit older than a lot of the other guys on the team. And, maybe this is another guy that the Rays have found like as another diamond in the rough. So if that's we're coming back to the whole, if everything clicks for the Rays, is you have guys that they've picked up in free agency that, got him for cheap, and they can plug him in and plug and play. Is we got a guy here that a couple teams gave up on, and now he's fully healthy and he can hit us home runs and get guys across the base. I think another guy too, you talk about Josh Lowe, is they're really high on Johnny DeLuca too. Johnny DeLuca is going to be that starting center field, and he's a guy that's got a lot of speed on the base path as well, and has shown signs of he can hit the ball too as well. Is he's got to turn the page too as well. There's a lot of guys on this team that got to turn the page from what they did last year. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch.
Christopher Morel, what do you allow on him? Because it's been talked about defensively, not very good. Yeah. Still strikes out a lot, showed that potential, has the power. They traded a third baseman to the Cubs. They're high on him. Where do you see him fitting in with this team?
I think with him is now he's got a full season with the team. Sometimes after coming through a trade after the second half is you're still kind of getting acclimated with the new team that you're on and where you fit in. I think now, since he has a full off season to be with the guys and know everybody in the clubhouse, and now he's, on the team, I think now hopefully you'll see the Christopher Morel of the, when he was with the Cubs. I mean, that's another guy that's got to step up and really, put up or I wouldn't say put up or shut up, but another guy that, hey, they traded Isaac Paredes to the Cubs for this guy. So I think it's another one of those, hey, we want to see what you can really do. So, Josh Lowe, Johnny DeLuca, Christopher Morel, it's a lot of those guys that, we were high on. We saw flashes, but we saw more of the same of, okay, well, they kind of faltered in the second half of the season. So I'd say it's another, he's in that group of guys that needs to step up this season to get it done.
What about this kid, Chandler Simpson? And then with him, also, there's been another guy that put on some weight in the infield, and I'm trying to think of his name right now, put on about 20 pounds, has been absolutely killing it for this Rays team. What about Simpson and the guy that's in the infield, which I can't think of his name right now? What's his, let's see here. Where are my notes at? I had him put on muscle right now. The guy played first base, is going to play in the infield.
Yandy?
No, not Yandy. The other guy, I believe he's Australian.
Oh, Curtis Mead. Yeah. He was a second base prospect, but yeah, that's a conundrum. I mean, Curtis Mead has been tearing the cover off the ball in the spring, and last year we saw some really bad defense from him, a lot of strikeouts too. And I think, if he's doing this in the spring, I mean, hopefully it translates into the regular season. So I know lump him in with that group of guys is okay. We want to see what you can really do. Turn that page and be another guy that contributes to the team. With Chandler Simpson, that's a interesting question. And, I know he's in AA right now. Look, if he's the type of kid that can do what he did so far in the spring, he's got a lot of speed. I know his defense is questionable, but look, take a chance, man. Why not? Yeah. I mean, if he doesn't pan out in the first month or two, send him back down. I mean, take a chance. I love it. Look, I remember of the Rays teams of old when they had a lot of speed on the base path, and when they stuck with their small ball mentality, which they did, they scored a lot of runs and they played better baseball. When they tried to go, hey, we're going to hit a lot of home runs, get a lot of guys across the base, it didn't really work out for them. So I'd rather see them be that type of scrappy, we're going to put ball in the play and we're going to have guys on the base path that can run the crap out of the bases, and you're not going to be able to get us. We're going to steal a lot of bases too. So yeah, I mean, with Chandler Simpson, I mean, it's something that Kevin Cash and the front office really have to think about. I know he's making a case for it right now. That's why he's hasn't been cut yet. So if he's continuing to produce and do what he's doing on the base path, I mean, why not give him a shot? The only thing is if they're bringing him up, who's going to be sent down or DFA'd or whatever. So that's something that they have to think about before the 40-man roster has to be finalized.
Good stuff, Mr. L. Bushman of the Rays Rewind podcast. Last question for you. Why is ESPN down on this bullpen and sell the bullpen out there?
How much time you got, Pete?
Oh, well, we got plenty of time. We got Rhett Matthew there of the Bubba Radio Network, the BRN, doing big things there in Cannon Fire podcast. Also talking Bucs on this show, but give me some.
The mothership, as they say about ESPN, has never really been a fan of Tampa Bay sports. So when they talk bad about the Rays, it's most of the time it's some guy that's based out of New York that doesn't really know what he's talking about. So I don't pay really attention to ESPN anymore. So whenever they write something, it's more like I'm going to click delete and not pay attention to it. So
yeah.
I have no idea what they're talking about.
Well, I mean, the bullpen overall, I mean, you got Fairbanks. Can he, we always talk about it, can he stay healthy? But what else do you have in that bullpen that a lot of Rays fans should be excited about?
They got a few guys in the offseason that they got in free agency and some trades. So I think the amount of guys, they have so many new guys in that bullpen. I don't even know their names right now. So I will throughout the season. I think my concentration's been on the starting rotation as well. Look, the Rays bullpen is going to surprise a lot of people and surprise ESPN. So I think ESPN should just maybe, watch FanDuel Sports Network when the app is actually working and just kind of take notes, relax and take notes, as Biggie Smalls would say, and just kind of pay attention to Tampa Bay Rays sports this year. So yeah, whenever ESPN says anything about the Rays, and it's like, you guys know what you're talking about. Just stay paying attention to NBA, which ESPN does best. They NBA is their thing now. It's not even baseball, because that's why they lost the contract, is because they don't even know what they're talking about anymore.
Well, they gave up on it, and I can't believe you would do that. And you would go to the NBA, which their ratings are down, they're political, the game itself stinks. It's all about 3-point, no physicality at all, finesse, and all these players say they're the greatest of all time. They're better athletes in the 80s and 90s. Come on, get out of here. L. Bushman, go ahead and promote yourself here on the Evolution of Sports Talk Television, my friend.
Yeah, you can follow me on X at the L Bushman. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell on the Rays Rewind podcast at the Sick Podcast, Rays Rewind on YouTube. And new episodes should be recorded next couple of days.
And we will do this again, my friend, throughout the baseball season. You're more than welcome here on the Sports Web. All right, boss?
Good to see you, man.
All right, good to see you. Good stuff. Baseball is back. You got to love that. And I know there's comments out there. I want to read those comments and get to them, but I want to get to our guests. I told you that I would be ready for an early start time, that I would bring the content tonight, that I would bring the passion, I would bring the excitement, and not bring any nonsense. I want to get out to this guy right here doing big things with the Bubba Radio Network there. Former CSB brother, Mr. Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast. I can't believe that CSB is no longer so much great talent. I mean, yourself, Jay Retcher, a lot of people out there that went to that school, and I'm just happy that you're a part of it. You're CSB brother, and I'm happy that you're back on the Evolution. What's going on, my friend? How you doing tonight?
Doing well, Sweet Pete. How you doing, my friend?
I'm
It has
doing
been,
good.
has
Yeah,
been
man. Yeah.
how am I sounding? Am I coming in hot? Do I need to turn myself down here?
No, you're fine, man. You did good. You got the setup there. I didn't see this setup. Look at that. You got the Allstott the sign. I got the Allstott jersey in the background. I mean, good stuff there. We got comments. I'm going to open up the phone lines because I want Rhett to take some questions about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But let's start out with John Gruden. What were your thoughts on him being reinducted or put back in, if you will, the Ring of Honor? Welcome to the Sports Web.
Happy to see it. Happy to see it for obviously the head coach, and then I think for the Buccaneers organization to take a little bit of accountability and come out and just get out in front of it. Be like, listen, after some time of reflection, time has passed. We've had some time to think about it. Maybe indirectly they admitted that they had jumped the gun taking him out in the first place. But to see it officially acknowledged, to see him back in the Ring of Honor, just continuing to repair his reputation, I guess, around league circles. Now, people are obviously going to feel whichever way they feel about John Gruden at the end of the day, and that's totally fine. Everybody has their opinion, but I do not think that anyone can deny that he has really been making the most out of this TV tour he's had the last couple of years, just trying to mend fences, build relationships once again. And I know that he's sitting pretty nice right now with his Barstool contract, but something tells me and a lot of other people within the next 2, 3, 4 years, maybe even less time than that, I would not be shocked to see John Gruden coaching the game of football again. He's what we call a for-lifer. And I definitely don't think his coaching days are over, but I'm glad that things are headed in the right direction for him. He's a really good guy. And as far as the Tampa Bay area goes, very well respected around these parts. So happy to see him fix that relationship with the Buccaneers. They've been working on that for a while.
They have been working on that a while, Rhett, and it's a good thing to see because I definitely think he's a part of the history, whether you want to deny it or not. I get it. He made some comments, and you can't make comments about your boss. Did he do it to them? He did it in an email. Still not right. Still some of those. But, again, he's been forgiven. He's been, put back into the Ring of Honor. So I'm happy for him. Dave feels the same way. Gruden should have never been taken out of the Ring of Honor. Let's go out to Chris Godwin because this is a big-time question. Even a Packers fan here, Justin says, do you think the Packers should go after Chris Godwin and get him a couple years other than a rental player? Now, of course, you get a young quarterback like a Jordan Love. You want to get him as supposed number one wide receiver. And make no mistake about it, Rhett, Godwin would be a number one wide receiver if he wasn't in Tampa. Of course, they've got Mike Evans. How concerned are you about Godwin leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and going to a team, especially with T. Higgins getting franchised today for that $26 million price tag?
It does feel hard to predict, but at the same time, I feel like year in and year out now, especially with Jason Light as general manager, the Buccaneers have found themselves in this position where you've got a couple of big name free agents that are going to be highly sought after from these other teams. And one way or another, they end up making things work. Now, they no longer have John Spytek in that front office. He takes the job with the Raiders. He was instrumental in a lot of the free agent deals the Bucs have been able to draw up for a lot of their guys these last several seasons, but they still have Mike Greenberg in the building. They still obviously have Jason Light, Jackie Davidson, and the rest of that front office who have been doing great work. So I don't know. It feels hard to predict solely because of where Godwin is in his career and what the Buccaneers are dealing with at wide receiver right now. I mean, Mike Evans is talking like a guy who's only going to play for 2 or 3 more years, realistically. Jalen McMillan has emerged, but you want to hope that he can continue to build off of that impressive second half of the rookie season. There were weeks where I think the Bucs were looking for him to step up during the 2024 season where both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were missing action, and he didn't really step up. Finished the year explosive, had tons of touchdowns. Towards the end of the year, you couldn't get away from him in the end zone. He was that valuable of a target for Baker Mayfield, but you want to see him continue to, pick up the pace here. I feel like Chris Godwin is back in Tampa. I think, the Buccaneers moving that negotiation deadline a little bit further so they could, open up contract talks. They've been vocal. Jason Light has always been vocal about his guys wanting to bring them back and get a deal done. I think I heard, Ira say this a little bit earlier, and I'm going to agree with him here as well. I think in a weird way, the injury helps the Buccaneers in this situation. Godwin was off to a monster start last year. He was far and away the Buccaneers' most effective receiver through the first half of the season when he was on the field. He was playing at another level. And unfortunately, the injury happens. His season is cut short. And that's going to be a little bit of a red flag to some of these teams, especially when you look at the pay raise, the cap continuing to go up, what these receivers are getting paid now. If you are a team like the Packers, is that too much money to invest in a wide receiver who's just coming off of a season-ending injury? That's a tough question that you have to ask yourself as general manager. I think Chris Godwin, though, as a player, has proved by this point in his career that he can bounce back from things like this. He is always a guy who is going to bet on himself, and I think it would be unwise to bet against him. His work ethic, is I think unmatched in a lot of ways. Jason Light said that there really aren't a lot of other guys in the building who show up and work as hard as Chris Godwin does. And when you consider all the things that he's had to overcome these last several seasons, the guy has made a steal. So I think the most likely scenario is Chris Godwin back in Tampa Bay. Jason Light always finds a way. And, my personal opinions on free agency, I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a couple of minutes, but I wouldn't necessarily be hurt if the Buccaneers were in a position to forego Chris Godwin and maybe take a look at a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. But I've also never really known Jason Light to be that kind of guy. I don't think he's looking to get that aggressive with a pass rusher to where they're not at least going to try and make something work with Chris Godwin. So again, it feels hard to predict all the way to the draft. There's a lot of things about the Buccaneers offseason that feels hard to predict, but I do know that Jason Light and this front office are going to make the best of it. And I think one of the ways they do that is by keeping Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that because, again, it is a blessing in disguise. He was off to a monster season there with 5 touchdowns and 50 receptions and looking like a top receiver, and he goes about it professionally on and off the field. So I would expect him to be kept. I think they want to come to some type of agreement. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. I feel like the NFL salary cap is like the national debt. We're always talking about it, but yet you still find some money. The Saints for the last 5 to 10 years, they're always over the cap, but yet they still find a way. So if you want to keep a player, you're going to be able to keep a player. With that being said, what is your take on the Lavonte David situation? Because a lot of Bucs fans, you watch David, he's playing at a high level. He's 35 years old. He's playing like a 25-year-old sideline to sideline. Do you think he comes back? And does it depend on what the Bucs do in free agency? Like what Gerald McCoy had to say a couple of weeks ago at Radio Row. Let's say the Bucs go out and trade for a Myles Garrett or Trey Hendrickson or get a Josh Sweat. Does that convince Lavonte David to come back? Because listen, Rhett, that championship window is open. It's open for a couple of years. That's the San Francisco 49ers, which it certainly seems like the window is kind of closed on them with possibly trading both wide receivers, not only Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders, but Brandon Ayuk. What do you say about that situation?
Man, with Lavonte David, again, going back to the Chris Godwin thing, feels hard to predict, but I feel like this one is so much more important because on the defensive side of the ball, they just need so much more help. We just talked about how deep they are at the wide receiver position. Jalen McMillan really stepping up. Mike Evans clearly going to be the guy until he's not. And anybody else who can fit in between is just a stud playmaker, and that's all a bonus for the Bucs. On the defensive side of the ball is where they need some help. And as much as I love Lavonte David, one of the greatest Tampa Bay Buccaneers to ever put on the red and pewter, he will be in the Ring of Honor. He should be an NFL Hall of Famer. The Super Bowl hopefully solidified that. One of the most underrated players in the NFL for the last decade. He can be a contributor, and he can be a guy that the Buccaneers lean on at the linebacker position at 35 years old. The film last year will prove that. Yes, there are certain areas of his game that have slowed down, but he can still do it all. He can still do all the things that he's been doing for over a decade now on that Buccaneers defense, but he needs some help. Having a healthy defense, being able to field the same guys week in and week out is obviously going to go a long way for not only veterans like Lavonte David, but Todd Bowles, when you evaluate his defense at the end of the year, the healthiness of that roster is going to be a factor. And that was a big issue for the Buccaneers last year on the defensive side of the ball. Just could not shake the injury bug. But not only do they need to get Levante David some help, they need to start planning for life beyond Levante David. Servassier Dennis, getting him healthy, I think, is going to be huge. And I think Bucs fans are going to have stronger opinions on him by the end of the 25 season than they ever have before, because I have a feeling next year you will probably see more of him than you ever have if he's able to stay healthy. I think that was the plan in 2024, unfortunately, and things just kind of fell off the wagon the way that they did. But that feels like a much more dire situation, because if Levante David decides to hang it up, you still haven't heard anything official yet. We are still a couple weeks away from the official start of free agency.
Yeah.
Expecting an answer somewhat soon. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to give him one, but it certainly changes not only how they look at the draft, but free agency, the level of talent that they want to bring in. I don't know if you need another vet backer, but I would just like to see something better than you got now.
Well, I mean, KJ Britt's not the answer. I don't know. Deion Jones, maybe they bring him back. We've seen flashes of brilliance with him with Atlanta, but you kind of have the same linebacker. I think, Jones could be better in coverage than KJ Britt, most likely a better tackler than KJ Britt. In fact, I'd rather have Kenny Britt, who used to play wide receiver, play linebacker than KJ Britt for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's say the Bucs address edge, because we assume that's the biggest need, right? You assume that edge is the biggest need going into free agency in the draft. Let's say you address that with getting a Khalil Mack or Josh Sweat, which we'll get back to in a moment. Is linebacker, especially middle, that kid Campbell out of Alabama at 19, does that become the number one need? First, Sweat and Khalil Mack. What do you think of those options? And then linebacker for the draft.
I like Sweat a lot. Now, the Khalil Mack thing, he's 34 years old. And I know that it is guaranteed production when you look at the guy's track record, but he's still 34 years old. I think that for the price tag and for the way that Jason Light likes to do business, let's not forget, I think the last time Jason Light really went out on a limb and got super aggressive on the defensive side of the ball was that 2017 offseason, or I'm sorry, 2018 offseason. They traded for Jason Pierre-Paul. They signed Vinny Curry. They signed Bo Allen. They drafted Vita Vea, all to build up the trenches. And I feel like the defense has found itself in another situation like it was in that 2018 offseason. I feel like they are almost at an impasse, for lack of a better term. You've got these talented guys all over the place. You've got Kalijah Kancey really coming into his own in the interior defensive line, led the team in sacks from the interior defensive line spot as a second-year player. You've got Vita Vea right behind him, literally in the prime of his career, one of the most dominant nose tackles in the NFL. Every single team fears him week in and week out. You cannot lose where number 50 is on the field. You've got a generational talent in Levante David, who, again, isn't going to be playing forever. We don't know how much longer he's going to be here for Tampa Bay. You've got some playmakers. Antoine Winfield Jr. had a down year. He is still a damn good football player. He just had a bad season. Injuries caught up to him, rotating backfields, rotating lineups week in and week out. He was a victim of that as well. Todd Bowles talked about Tyke Smith potentially getting bumped up into that safety spot, taking over for Jordan Whitehead, who is now a free agent once again. So on the defensive side of the ball, it feels like the areas where they fall off, they really fall off. We need to have a discussion about this cornerback room. Jamel Dean, a lot of fans have opinions about him, but I still feel like higher up on the priority list is edge rusher number 1, like you said, and inside linebacker number 2. Now, when it comes to Khalil Mack, again, I think the Buccaneers need to make a significant move on the defensive side of the ball, specifically for an edge rusher. Now, I don't think it needs to be a Myles Garrett significant kind of move. I don't even think it needs to be a Khalil Mack significant kind of move, because he is 34 years old. I don't think the Buccaneers would pony up the resources to make that kind of move, but I do think they need to just throw as much ammo at this as they possibly can. Again, Jason Light has his way of doing business, so he's not going to go after the most sexy prospects. I know that it was reported, I think it was either Jenna Layden or Jordan Schultz who had got it out there first, that the Buccaneers are legitimately interested in Khalil Mack. And I'm sure that them, along with a list of 10 other teams, are interested in Khalil Mack. But I'm sure they also have their own list of guys that are a little more secretive among NFL circles. And I think Jason Light's going to try and build the strength of this defensive line with players like that. But they need to bring some serious attention to it. I don't think a flashy first round pass rusher. I think there's some fine talent. That one guy at a Boston college, Easy E, we've been calling him on the podcast. Like, there are a lot of bona fide players coming out here in the first round. But as we saw with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, I know he was, basically a second round pick, all things considered. But when you look at these edge rushers and even some of these defensive linemen, Yaya Diaby, really good rookie season, 7.5 sacks. He was able to bump up the pressure numbers in his second year, led the team in pressures. I think he was like top 5 among all NFL edge rushers in pressures last year, but only got 4.5 sacks. So all of these, statistics look great, and they prove that Yaya Diaby is developing into a great player. Kalijah Kancey leading the team in sacks isn't ideal, but it proves that he is developing into a very special player. All of those things taken into account, the Bucs still sucked at getting after the quarterback last year.
Yes.
And there were so many times where it's losing you football games because you can't get off of the field. You can't prevent 3rd and 12. You can't get off of the field for 15 plays, and the opponent, eats up 9.5, 10 minutes to start the third quarter of a game. There's just too many situations where you find yourself begging for more pressure on the quarterback. Todd Bowles and Jason Light both addressed that at the combine as well. That needs to be their top priority on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have reached an impasse on the defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of talent, but I don't think they get over that hump unless they try to load up there as much as they possibly can. Because if you assume that Levante David retires, that's another huge hole at the linebacker position alongside a huge drop off at the edge rusher spot.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a recipe for success, but I don't know. I am a little hesitant about a going after a big name like a Myles Garrett or a Khalil Mack. Maybe that's just me talking scared, but I do think that this is a problem that can be addressed without mortgaging what you have to go and get a name like that.
Let me go ahead and convince you of this, Mr. Rhett Matthew of Cannon Fire Podcast, on why you go out and get a Myles Garrett. It's like the scene from Casino, one of my favorite movies, right? They're often all the guys, and they go, "Hey, this guy Jimmy, he's a really good guy." And they go, "You know what? Why take the chance? What are we taking the chance for? You just said it. It's tough for guys the first year to make that transition to become that impact that you want on that defense. You've already done this. You've already went down that road with the Yaya Diaby, who's shown some flashes of brilliance. And Todd Bowles, thought he should have had 15 sacks last year. And with the pressure rate, you should have had that. You have a JT West who hasn't been very good. You have a Noah Spence. Go out, get a veteran. The Bucs have done it before in their history. I get it. Jason Light is not privy to giving up 2 first-round picks, but Keyshawn Johnson, you give up 2 first-round picks. Would you do it over again? Of course you would, because he wins you a Super Bowl. You give up 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks to get a John Gruden. If this is your window and you get a guy who's 29, 30 years old, 7 consecutive double-digit sack seasons, you go out and get Myles Garrett. You do what Gerald McCoy said you do, because that is your consistent option. That's the guy that you have to go for, or Trey Hendrickson. Now, ESPN believes that Josh Sweat would be the guy that the Bucs would go for. In fact, he says, although the Bucs were surprising 11th in pass rush win rate, 41.7% this past season, they're probably losing several edge rushers to free agency, including Anthony Nelson, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and then Sweat. Sweat had 6 tackles, 3 quarterback hits, and 2.5 sacks. Also had 8 sacks during the regular season and 33 pressures. He will be 28 next season. Florida State guy, most likely, pass rushers, they don't grow on trees, so he's going to get paid a lot of money. Would you like a Josh Sweat, even though you may have to pay him $20 to $22 million in free agency?
That's the name that would be number one on my list because of all the things that you would just mention there. 28 years old. That is a world of difference in an NFL pass rusher. Khalil Mack is the man. He will forever be the man. The only player in the NFL I've ever seen throw Tristan Wirfs around the way that he did in Chicago back in 2020. I don't think I've ever seen another lineman do that to our left tackle. With that being said, I think there is just so much more upside to bringing in a guy that can potentially stay here and continue to win here. You had brought up, that window, pounding the table for a playmaker. The Bucs have a lot of very talented guys. Vita Vea is the closest thing they have to a game wrecker. Yaya Diaby is developing into his own. Kalijah Kancey is developing into his own. Levante David isn't speeding up every year. He can be a game wrecker. Again, he can do all the things athletically he's been able to do for a decade, but he's not getting faster. He's not getting younger out there. And every year now, he's going to sign a 1-year contract and decide if this is going to be the last ride or not. You can't rely on that for 3, 4, 5 more years. So the Buccaneers have so many players in their prime right now that if you're one of those people who looks at building this team through the draft, which is a valid option. I mean, look at the star power that's already there. All the players that I just mentioned are Jason Light draft picks, even the guys on the offensive side of the ball. But Vita Vea wasn't what he was in his rookie year. Kalijah Kancey had some flashes, but he certainly wasn't what he is now in his rookie year. Yaya Diaby led the team in sacks with 7.5. He even had a hard time following that up his sophomore season. It's the question you ask yourself is, do I want to wait 2-3 years for these drafted players to develop and contribute while I'm wasting prime seasons of these other guys? Like Vita Vea is not going to be playing at this level 4 years from now. I don't think he will be. It would be great if he was, and it would be, a lot of longevity on his part. It would truly cement him as one of the best to do it, but I don't think he'll be at this level in 4 or 5 years.
I don't either.
Levante David, he will not be playing football in 4 or 5 years. If he is, it'll be amazing. It'll be record breaking. You know what I mean? I don't think we've ever quite seen anything like that. I know that some guys are getting up there in age, but you just have to start planning for the future. And when you have a lot of pieces on this team currently that make you say the Super Bowl window's open, this team is ready to win now, there's a lot of arrows pointing in that direction. I think you have to really put all your chips into the pile here if you're Jason Light. So I can agree with everyone pounding the table to go get that big, sexy free agent. I'm not necessarily against it. I think a name like Myles Garrett or Khalil Mack for the resources would end up being a mistake when you think about how long he's going to be here contributing. Josh Sweat is a much sexier name. I know there's a lot more paperwork that comes with that as well, and some cap gymnastics that you have to figure out. But that would be a worthwhile move. That would be a move that instantly allows you to get after the quarterback with 4 down linemen, something the Bucs haven't been able to do for the last 2 seasons. Todd Bowles isn't any stranger to mixing things up on the defensive line. He has tried all kinds of looks. He has tried all kinds of, disguising blitzes and showing these quarterbacks different defensive fronts. They can't get after the quarterback. So just bring in a guy, just bring in a dog, bring in a playmaker. They need a playmaker on the defensive line. I don't want to hear about the potential because I'm bigger fans of these guys than anybody. Like, I'm a huge Kalijah Kancey fan. I got more Kalijah Kancey Prism autograph cards than I know what to do with. I got the whole rainbow collected over here. Yaya Diaby, all of these guys, I'm such big fans of these players, but we can't sit around here and pretend like they weren't partially responsible for this defensive line being as bad as it was last year. They need help, and they need a proven pass rusher. That, to me, is the only way that this Buccaneers pass rush gets over the hump. I feel like they're at an impasse, and unless they get aggressive and they go get themselves a dog, for lack of a better term, I think they're just going to continually run into these bumps in the road here.
I'm telling you right now, I think I've convinced you of Myles Garrett. That guy's a dog. And then think about it. He gets the opportunity to reunite, and it feels so good with Baker Mayfield. Who doesn't like that storyline? Rhett, Matthew, thanks a lot for your time. Go ahead and promote yourself here on The Evolution.
One last thing. I do like Josh Sweat. He's number one. But if we're talking about pipe dream, big names, the perfect Buccaneer to me, the perfect Buccaneer, we say defensive end, but the perfect Buccaneer pass rusher to me is a guy like Max Crosby. Just 0 to 110 every single snap. He is trying to rip the head off of the quarterback every single play. He is consistent. He is inevitable sometimes. Even if the Raiders are what they are, he is a superstar. He is a freak athlete, and I think he's a guy that I would love. I would give anything to see Max Crosby in the red and pewter. Is it very likely? Not at all. It is not at all likely, but you never know. Never say never. Peter, thank you, man. I appreciate you letting me get on here and yap about the Buccaneers. This is, sometimes it can be a slow season. So it's always great to get on here and just chop it up with you. It's been far too long. You can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Also, check out the Cannon Fire podcast for more Tampa Bay Buccaneer news and content. YouTube.com/Cannon Fire podcast. Anywhere you download a podcast, Cannon Fire podcast. And then last but not least, I got a new project that we just dropped a couple months ago called Video Americana. It is a lot of fun stuff, mini documentaries, restaurant features. I don't even really know yet, but we're just going to have some fun with it, and we're going to try and be creative. So all of that and then some. Peter, I want to say thank you again, man. It's always a pleasure catching up with you.
Absolutely. Don't be a stranger. We got free agency in just 9 days away, so you're more than welcome to come back next week here on The Evolution, my friend, okay?
Appreciate you, Pete. We'll stay in touch.
All right, sounds good. There you go, Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast. Is that it? No, of course it's not it. I told you I was bringing the content tonight. Let's go ahead and go out to this woman who has been on this show before, who is now a professor, works for Fox Sports, covers the Washington Commanders. She'll give you the enemy profile, if you will. Let's go out to Professor Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Welcome to the Evolution of Sports Talk Television, beautiful. How you doing?
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a while, but it's good to be back.
It is. What have you been doing with yourself? Now you're a professor. You're working for Fox Sports. What are you doing there in the DMV?
I work too much. It's been fun. I just wrapped up my first regular season with American University women's basketball. Finished my first season as a color commentator, which was so much fun. So shout out to the Patriot League and Patriot League Hoops, and especially the American University Eagles for giving me that opportunity. I was in studio earlier shooting for the Atlantic 10 conference. As you know, tournament season is right around the corner. And then, yes, most will know me for my work with Fox Sports, and then doing a lot of hosting lately, Peter. So I am doing a lot of panels. I was just down at the CIAA tournament here in Baltimore, which, by the way, must say rest in peace, Angie Stone. It's still bewildering to me that she was on her way there and unfortunately lost her life. So I do have to send prayers and respects to her family. And of course, everybody else that was on that day. I'm praying for their speedy recovery. But it's been busy with college football, doing women's basketball. Of course, we have the Unrivaled League. You guys probably can't see, but I have it on TV behind me, getting ready for WNBA. Like, Peter, it's my crazy season. Like, I get no, and I have to grade papers tonight. Like, what is life right now? I'm taking my students on a field trip in the morning. So this is the crazy life that I somehow asked for, that I somehow really enjoy. Oh, my podcast, definitely check out my podcast, Listen In with Cannon. That's been amazing and fun. Just actually wrapped up a show earlier with two greats that used to play for the Navy football. So we got to talk about Navy football and kind of its resurgence this year, which was super fun to discuss. So it's been busy, to say the least.
It has been busy, and you're a natural host. I'm not surprised with all your success. I've seen you on Peacock before. You did that. That was tremendous.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Talking basketball, but let's talk about your Washington Commanders.
Yeah. My gosh.
I mean, they get all the way.
Yeah. Like, I mean, how exciting is it for right now for fans in DC? And I'll tell you, there's a lot happening in DC. Y'all might have heard the news lately, but sports fans right now are super excited, coming off coming off a season where the Commanders fell just short of Super Bowl hopes, and making it to the NFC Championship game. Like, I mean, no one had that on their radar right at the beginning of the season. And what JD5 had done in his rookie campaign, Peter, it's only going to go up from here. I think it's been so exciting. Terry McLaurin coming off another 1,000-yard season. We know what scary Terry can do, and he's been so great. I think largely underrated. Unfortunately, I think the DC market, because the Washington team has been bad for so long, nobody was really looking this way. And of course, there was the whole quarterback issue before JD5 came. But now with the Deebo Samuel edition, I mean, everybody's in my inbox. Everybody's hitting me up. Everyone's talking about it because they're excited that JD5 has another sure-handed wide receiver, right? I think, which is going to be huge. I think this opens up space for Terry, who often, obviously, teams tried to game plan against, and some teams had success, but less teams had success against him because he is Terry McLaurin, and he's so good, especially when he beats you and finds some space. I think now the fact that teams will have to, obviously game plan for both. I think Deebo needs this bounce back year. We heard everything happening in San Francisco. I think what Washington has built with their culture will be a good fit for him. Dan Quinn means serious business, though he's a beloved players coach. But Adam Peters, he's building here in Washington, and people are buying into it. I think, after the great rookie campaign Jaden Daniels had offensively, to add another weapon. And I think the wide receiver place was where there was a lot of questions, especially when you watched that last game that Washington lost in that championship game. It needed to be somebody else stepping up. There's a lot of conversation last year about Diami Brown. What he showed up some in the postseason, but, consistency was a thing. Noah Brown, and everybody knows, what he was able to do when healthy. He kind of, I think, rose to really stardom in Washington after that, magnificent catch against the Bears game when they beat the Chicago Bears, which is really when I think people begin to take notice of this Washington team and take them seriously. But I think JD5, again, having somebody else he can throw the deep ball to, when he scrambles, he can make a play for, it's going to be special. This adds another element to Washington's offense. Cliff Kingsbury has to be the happiest guy in the world right now. And again, I think Washington's going to be a team you have to take seriously again, Peter, as we talk about NFC East football, not just NFC East football, but I'm talking about NFC in general, because I think that's how exciting folks are, for this Washington team who went and surprised the world, right, last season.
Well, really, they really did. And I'm not surprised by the rookie quarterback, because I talked to Brian Kelly a couple of years ago down here at the ReliQuest Bowl. And he said, listen, the guy's going to command the room. He's going to command the locker room. He's not going to be too big for the lights. He did it at LSU. He did it against the Bucs, which was disappointing watching that wild card game there. But now your organization, they've transformed to better ownership. The players love that. And you make the move for Deebo. Were you surprised that Deebo went for a 5th-round pick? Because Kelsey, this guy right here, when he could stay healthy, and that's a big if.
He's dangerous when he stays healthy, and and then when there's no drama, it's amazing. I think the 5th-round pick surprised me, but I'm not surprised. Jaden Daniels has made Washington a go-to spot. People want to play with him. He's exciting. Now, I'm not one that is quick to compare him to Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of folks are, but I think the thing that they both have in common is that they play exciting football, right? The guys like them. They're a guy's guy. They draw people. People want to play with them, and they believe in what they're selling. Jaden Daniels, and he revived a franchise. I'm just going to say they were on life support. I mean, Commanders fans have a long time in Washington been dormant because good football, we thought Washington fans didn't deserve good things for a long time because, again, it was a quarterback carousel. Just things weren't working. The ownership, was bogus, and crazy things were happening. We had investigations. We had a congressional oversight committee into things, Peter. Things were bad in Washington. Look at the new ownership, a guy who has hometown roots and knows football in this area. And I was like you, I've seen Jaden Daniels. I knew his talent from LSU. I go on to New Orleans a lot, and we talk about, again, just his greatness. And he's been special. There was questions when he first came to Washington, about his size, his stature. Would he be too skinny, right? Would he be able to protect himself? But, obviously he's shown folks, the man can, he is a tough kid, and just his demeanor when he plays, I know he gets a lot of praise about that, just staying calm, cool, collected, his leadership, on the football field, and just how focused he was. We heard that from the beginning of training camp last year with Jaden Daniels, just focus, serious, really wanting to make a connection and build chemistry with the guys. And so I think now to have a guy like Debo, and I'm excited to see, again, how training camp will be, opting into those volunteer sessions. So these guys can really grow and build. I think Washington is on to something. Washington, Peter, now is that team that you don't want to see because you don't know what to expect from this Commanders team. Now, again, I still have some questions. I think there still needs to be some little sharps on defense for the Commanders, but offensively, again, this adds another element. I think it means Cliff Kingsbury can be that much more creative in his playbook to really create a dangerous Washington squad that can really go in and cause some defenses some problems.
I gotta get to this right here. Sun Devil Dave, who is a big time Jaden Daniels fan.
I love what he said. Yeah,
it went to the Commanders from 5th pick. Did the Mavs GM set that up? I know you're an NBA girl, also. What did you think of that trade? Because I thought it was a hoax. And
it was so much. It was crazy. Yeah. I will say, though, the beauty of Washington, though, was the cap space, Peter, right? That they had. The cap space that Washington had. And then you look at, Debo being there. The Luka thing, I'm still like, my God. And then the Lakers, what now? Second in the West? Like, it's wow. Like, nobody saw that coming. I think the whole NBA, nobody had that on their bingo card. Like, as sports fans, how lucky were we to witness and see that? Everyone thought Shams was hacked or like this couldn't be right. But, I think the NBA, we're coming off the season when we're talking about ratings, Peter, and people just not being as excited about NBA basketball. People are still complaining about the All-Star game, Peter. I think this is just what the NBA needed. For Luka, I think it gives him a fresh start and a chance. And I know how special Dallas was and what he was building there. But to get to play with, the king and LeBron James, and towards his later ends of basketball for a premier, for a top franchise, an iconic brand. I think it's really special for Luka. I think we're still seeing him be able to build some chemistry with LeBron. Of course, health is going to be always wealth with Luka and keeping him healthy and on that basketball court. But I'm excited. I mean, the Lakers, it's showtime. Like they always know how to capture some attention. And I think, again, with time, I think this can potentially be special. I know when the trade first happened, Peter, everyone was talking about that center position and who would really be able to be the true Lakers big guy. But all in all, like LeBron, he knows what he wants. He gets what he wants. And Luka, again, I mean, you look at somebody who was the leading scorer in the NBA last year, like Luka's special. And I'm excited to see him, kind of prove the doubters wrong and just, showcase that he is a true top talent in the NBA, taking his talents further out west. So I think we're going to be in for an interesting postseason, Peter, in the NBA. I think that's going to be when folks really uptick and help get those ratings up. Because I really do think this is a year that it's hard to say a favorite. Like, yes, I know Boston is still Boston. I mean, the Celtics, with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and how special that squad is and the chemistry they've built. But I'm still not just going to easily hand over the mantle to them that easy, Peter, because, again, I think this is going to be a unique season. OKC is another team, I want to see, can they do it in the postseason, right? Can they not just be this good regular season team? I have questions about them. The Nuggets have some question marks, but they are still the Nuggets. I think I know pretty much every team except here in DC, Peter. The Wizards, it's just been a rough, hard, bad season for Washington. Washington fans, prayers with you, sending good vibes, and in the future, you should trust.
Well, listen, speaking of special, we got a special talent here, Kelsey Nicole Nelson, hanging with KNN here, Fox Sports. Love her to death. She's great here on the Sports Web. I'm your host, Peter Blake, your Rolex reporter. I say the same thing about the Orlando Magic. I expected big things here. They got two superstars. I don't know if it's a coach. I don't know what's happening. You got to tell me what's going on.
So good. Yeah. I like I like watching the Magic.
I do too, but injuries, everything else. But going back to Washington, Jonathan Allen, he could be on the trading block. What's the situation with him?
This is going to be, I think, Washington has a lot of big decisions to make. I will tell you, though, what's been so special about Washington, I think now they finally, Peter, have something called a functional front office. And with the old leadership, I don't think that's something, that they could fully say. Adam Peters has big decisions to make. And when you look at this defense, like I said, I told you I had questions about the defense. I think Washington paying attention to this offensive side. I will say, look in the draft early for Washington to also make a defensive move. Jonathan Allen, somebody that's so special to the squad and to this team, and someone who knows what it is to play for this team through the good. and the bad, and obviously had high hopes and expectations for him. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of folks here, a lot of the fans here, all in my ear talking about Myles Garrett and who they want. But Washington, I think we look at Washington, Peter, the need on defense is imminent. They need pass rush, right? That's going to be important. And I think also in the secondary, again, that's always going to been a question. Like Washington has to shore that up. Again, Washington not the worst on defense, but again, I think they had a solid defense. But if they really do want to get to the promised land, and they came so close last year to getting to that Super Bowl, they want to be playing out in the West Coast next year in the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a big question. But again, I think what's flexible about Washington is when you look at the cap space for Washington, they'll have a little bit of flexibility, and I think they really can make some moves. So, Peter, I am most looking forward again to I think this front office gets it, and they want to win, and they want to win soon, and they want to win now. This is a feeling we haven't felt in Washington in a long time. So I think every guy knows they have to bring it. But again, it's a business move and business decisions. And Washington really, I think a lot of people here really thought Washington was going to be in New Orleans last year, Peter. So there's a lot of people, though, who feel like Washington's this close. But of course, they have to get through who? The reigning champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. And so they will do whatever is necessary to try to make that happen.
You're exactly right. And a lot of people have talked about Myles Garrett. We've been talking about it ad nauseum on this show. I feel like it's the best move the Bucs could make. Even though you have to trade a couple first-round picks, you make that move because you know what you're getting with Garrett. You don't know what you're getting with those first-round picks. Washington would be a team that makes that move. Philadelphia would be a team that makes that move.
Yeah. I mean, he's probably the hottest commodity right now. I think everybody's courting him. Like, who doesn't want him?
Why wouldn't you? I mean, and there's fans out there in Tampa. Well, you got to give up 2 first-round picks. Well, wait a minute. You got a guy who's 29, 30 years old, 7 consecutive double-digit sack seasons. What are we talking about here? Over 100 sacks in his career. He's a Hall of Famer. He's going to get you to the promised land. If it takes giving up first-round picks, KNN, you make that move all day long and twice on Sunday.
Yes, I love that. Yes, like he's somebody you add right now because you mentioned his age, but he's still playing in his prime. You don't wait on this. Myles Garrett he's a game changer. If we want to talk Cam Newton language, he's a game changer and someone that can really impact the game. So I think all the net to say, and I know he's not a quarterback, folks, but I do like that word game changer for him because he impacts games. And we know he was disgruntled. And then he wants to be on a contending team. Remember, he got tired of being in Cleveland with what they were selling him. So I think if he wants to be on a team that can win soon. And I think that's what's so exciting, honestly, Peter, about Jaden Daniels. I mean, this young guy has made Washington a destination place. And that's something it had not been. Like guys literally want to come play and they believe in what's being put out there. They see it and they see the change that's existed in Washington. So I think wherever Myles Garrett lands, they're going to be that much more dangerous. He has a hard decision though, I feel like, right? Because again, if he wants to win now, and of course get paid as he deserves, it's going to be interesting. But I will say, like I said, watch Washington because they're busy. They are keeping busy. And again, they know how close they were last season. And they just want to get that much closer to, again, just bringing good football back in Washington. I really do. I will tell you, people really do feel that Jaden Daniels can win a Super Bowl in his tenure in Washington. Like that's how high hopes are around this young kid.
Well, there should be. And listen, when you have a rookie young quarterback or second-year quarterback and you have that contract that's helpful for that team.
Yes, the rookie contract,
that's when you build around it. And they're doing the right thing with the ownership. They're going in the right direction. Talk about Marshawn Lattimore, old nemesis of Mike Evans. He didn't look necessarily the same. What's the thought process on him going forward? Do you think he could be a cap cut?
Yeah, remember when he came to Washington, there was that injury concern, right? And him getting healthy. And then in Washington, some of that same stuff existed. Obviously, the last game, things didn't really go as planned and not his best game. But, he's still a man, I think, that, can play some good football. But I think for Washington, I want to be sure, Peter, and the guys here in Washington. And again, I think, like you said, but Washington having a flexible cap and having cap room, I think will make things interesting. And like you said, the draft, you're always taking a chance, right? Can these guys do what they put on film? Can they do what they did in college? NFL is a whole different league, right? I mean, it's exciting and scary, right? That's what draft day is. Exciting and scary because you're putting your hope, on the potential of somebody. I think Marshawn Lattimore, though, I think if people have selective memory or recent memory, it won't be as good for him. But again, Washington brought him here because they saw what he could do and they saw the need in him wanting to come here. I think he's going to be interesting, though, Peter, again, just because of how he finished. And I think in his position, I might want somebody younger who I can trust more on the health end of the spectrum. The health end for him is kind of what I'm most worried about. Can he stay healthy? Because that's what Washington needs.
Yeah, that's exactly what Washington needs at the end of the day. They need healthy guys, and you're exactly right. You have that window that's open. You talk about the rest of the NFL. You were down covering the Super Bowl there in New Orleans. Give us some of the sights and sound. Take us behind the curtain, because I always tell my stories on Radio Row. Tell me some stories. How many celebrities did you see down there in New Orleans?
I love New Orleans. I check into my hotel. I'm walking out, and the first person I see in New Orleans, Peter, is Jason Kelsey, of all people. He was filming a commercial for Courtyard Marriott, and so of course I had a chance to chop it up with him. And nicest guy, truly the nicest guy that you could meet. So that was amazing. New Orleans, there was crawfish, y'all, on Radio Row like that. New Orleans was special. Like they really felt the vibe. There was bands everywhere, Peter. You were vibing to good music. I think something unique though about New Orleans for folks to see is, like, I know the military presence, I think, was something that really probably should be. I mean, I have never, Peter, in my life felt so safe somewhere. But at the same time, it's also, when you think about it, scary that you had to have like literally troops on every corner, state troopers and military personnel, right? Because of what happened in New Orleans back on New Year's Eve. So all that to say, it was a special vibe and feeling. Like, I mean, New Orleans is, it's a great host city. It does something to you. Like, there was a party everywhere. Everyone was like, Peter ate way too much food. There was way too much jambalaya, way too many boys. Like, everybody gained some weight on New Orleans. A lot of us had to, do a little dance in our airplane seats because we felt a little different on the way back home than when we went there. But the venue, the tailgate parties, like, everything, I will say everything went good. The only thing that was crazy, right before Super Bowl, Peter, like, it started raining hard. So, and New Orleans with traffic, it's like any city, especially with Super Bowl, traffic is hard. So that was probably the only negative. But Radio Row was great. I mean, everybody was in New Orleans. We had, I know people feel differently about, but I thought we had a great halftime show by Kendrick. It's probably, do you see all the TikToks and stuff that have come from the Super Bowl performance? It still feels like it's halftime. Everybody was inspired by Kendrick Lamar. And then we had almost like a blowout in a way. Like, we had an uncharacteristic Chiefs team and a dominating Philadelphia Eagles team. Like, so all in all, I thought New Orleans was great for Jalen Hurts. I'm excited for him. I think he's so underrated. Peter, I think he's one of the most underrated and disrespected quarterbacks in the National Football League. So I love that moment for him. And I loved how far him and Nick Sirianni came. Like, I thought that was the best storyline. I still remember Nick Sirianni's first press conference. And honestly, everybody felt like he was a clown and like a jokester. I don't know if you remember his first press conference. I'm like,
oh yeah, and everybody remembers Dan Campbell's press conference.
Yeah, like, but I mean, look at him now, Super Bowl champion. Like, so and then we heard all the the rumors about this him and Jalen not really saying eye to eye and stuff like that. So for them to be able to finish that storyline, capping it off with a ring against a Chiefs team that had been so, I want to say it's fully dominant, right? Because the Chiefs are that team that they find a way to win, but like to do it against a dynasty that was being built in Kansas City, I absolutely loved it for them. And I think New Orleans was such, again, a special place to do it because of the culture that was there, the vibe that was there. Like, I don't think you can have a bad day, Peter, in New Orleans. Like, it's that type of city. And Peter, it was 80 degrees, like 70, 80 degrees there in February. So none of us were mad. We had no jackets. We were walking around. Like, it was definitely a good time.
I love it. And listen, you get a chance to eat. I mean, it's not Miller's, of course, which you imagine when we got together, you came to Florida and we're trying
Miller's was good, but New Orleans food, Peter, as you know, New Orleans food is like second to none.
Of course, it is. It's top notch. We're on with KNN here on Fox Sports, Peacock, all kinds of Professor Nelson, I should say, here on the Sports Web. I mean, were you surprised by what the defense did in the Philadelphia Eagles? That was dominant, and it takes me back.
They made the statement. I mean, they set the tone, Peter. I felt like for that game, and once they got going, I mean, they made Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. They made that O-line uncomfortable. I mean, it really got to a point in the game where like you're just like, what's the defense going to do next? And the Chiefs couldn't problem solve, right? They weren't able to adjust for it. So, I think Philadelphia's defense. I know the quarterback always, gets the praise after the game, but Philly's defense set that tone and ensured that the Philadelphia Eagles won that game. That was fun to watch. Very fun to watch. I'm also super excited for Saquon on the other side of the football, though. Like, just his storyline, and I still can't believe the Giants did what they did. And honestly, Peter, what are the Giants thinking about Aaron Rodgers? Like, what's happening in New York? I don't ever know what's happening in New York.
It's desperation because they think they're going to fire their coach. The coach is getting ready to get fired. The general manager is getting ready to get fired. So you go after Aaron Rodgers.
New York is a mess.
Is he cancer? He has been a
That's why I'm like, and he was right next door. You didn't witness that. Like New York, it's like the NFC East now. You got to take like Washington serious. Obviously, you got to take the Philadelphia Eagles serious. We'll see what the Cowboys do with Dak. Jerry Jones always has us scratching our head, and we'll see what we get out. But the Giants, I have no words to explain what's happening with the Giants organization because it's bewildering, Peter. It's wild. Like,
yes.
The most simple-minded person can understand like what to do in New York, and it's not to get Aaron Rodgers. Did you not just witness? Were you not entertained by the bad play? Like, why would you want to bring that to your franchise who desperately needs to go up? And if Saquon didn't teach you a lesson, like I don't know what else to teach them. So, if anybody, I'm praying for the Giants the most in the draft. I hope they make smart decisions.
Well, and they haven't, and that's the sign of a bad franchise. Besides Malik Neighbors, who and the running back Tracy showed some flashes of brilliance.
Fair.
Good rookie there. Neighbors out of LSU, so you'll see if you can get him a quarterback because you don't want to waste those years.
No, and he's going to get disgruntled. Yeah, you got to give him something quick.
Right. Not everybody's Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, able to play with any quarterback when it comes down to it. But there's also talk of them trading for a Cam Ward. What do you think about this quarterback class and a Cam Ward and a Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado?
Yeah, obviously Shedeur Sanders has galvanized the nation because I mean, who wasn't watching Colorado football? I do think Cam Ward is underrated. When I think about I think Cam Ward is going to be unique, but I do think I think he's special, but I do think I don't think the results will be as instant. So I think, Peter, honestly, it's for a franchise. Do you want to win now or do you want a little bit more of a project? I do think I like him being able to be elusive. But like I said, I think if I'm building, I think people knew Jaden Daniels was special, but I don't think nobody had them, Peter, going to the NFC Championship game with Jaden Daniels. With Cam Ward, I think you have a quarterback that's going to help you be on the upward mend, but I do think it's going to be some time. Even Shedeur Sanders, I like him a lot. I think he's very special, but the NFL is a different beast. And having a Travis Hunter is so special, and I love watching Shedeur Sanders, and I think he's going to be special with any wide receiver he's able to connect with and tight end. But again, I think it takes time because even Jaden Daniels, as much as we praise him, I still remember his first game too, Peter.
Oh,
you remember that?
I was in the press.
You remember that first game? Yep, because you were there.
Yeah.
Right. And so but he learned quick. I will give him that. Like from that game to the last game, Jaden Daniels is a quick learner. He's focused. It's one of the best things about him. Like he really loves the game. He knows what football means to this community, and he wants to deliver. So he takes it seriously. But again, I think there's going to be that growing pain spurts. And for some reason, every year people in the draft get amnesia and think all these quarterbacks can come save a franchise. When, as we know, it takes a lot more than that, Peter, especially for these franchises that they'll be going to. So, I think I would take a chance on Cam Ward at the end of the day, Peter. But again, not for instant gratification, for more of a, what are we calling it in New York or in Philadelphia? More of somebody who I trust the process with, I will say.
We go with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know what they're doing there. Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, he's the coach. I don't even think he would got an interview as an offensive coordinator.
That was just the most random announcement.
I mean, you hear Michael Irvin. The rumor was because I'm friends with some people there in Dallas, and Michael Irvin was pounding the table for getting a Deion Sanders, and they go with Brian Schottenheimer. So I don't know what Dallas is doing. By the way, Jimmy Johnson retired today as a broadcaster, 31 years.
I saw that. I'm gonna miss him on that crew, man. They were so special. Football is going to be so different, Peter. Like I feel the same way when Phil and Boomer left. Yes. Like and I like Nate Burleson. I do like him a lot on that. I think he was a great addition. But but without Phil and Boomer, like it's not the same, right? Like it's like when you grow up with these guys. I was on a show earlier, Peter, and they were saying like Jimmy Johnson had been there since '94, and I was like, my gosh, that's my lifetime, Peter.
Yes. That's when Fox started. They started out with Jimmy Johnson and Gary Bradshaw.
Yes.
I mean, and they were just starting out.
They have so much chemistry, so fun to watch. Like they made it fun, but I think what I loved especially is like he made it comfortable to be you on a broadcast set, right? And like wasn't afraid to show the fandom. Like I think really that fun side that people actually really do like to watch when they're watching these broadcasts. So, but I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him to go get some sun, spend time with the family, keep the beautiful head of gray hair, like all that stuff. I'm excited for him to be able to do. But he will definitely be missed right on football Sundays. Like that studio show, it just was great. You can't like certain things you just can't, construct. That was natural, right? The camaraderie they built, just the chemistry that they had, like we felt that. And so he will definitely be missed, but he gave us a lot of great years, a lot of great decades of broadcasting.
He did. Absolutely. What do you think about Tom Brady as a broadcaster?
I actually like Tom. I think he gets a lot of flack. But
I do too.
Yeah. People love to hate him, Peter.
I mean,
he's salty. He beats your favorite team, but like, I think he gives good insight. It's not too much. Like, and then I think he shows his personality. I get to see a lot of his games. He loves calling Baltimore. He's a big Lamar Jackson fan, and I absolutely love actually when he's on the Ravens broadcast because he's one like he respects talent, he respects grades. But I think he's a good blend. Like I said, he gives you the analysis, but he also like has fun with it. People just love to hate Tom. I really think it's that, Peter. Like people just love to hate him because he's Tom Brady. But I think he does a good job. I like Tony Romo too, though. I don't know. I think everybody that people hate, I actually enjoy listening to.
Well, it's because you like the X's and O's. You want to hear the talk. You want to learn about the game. Some people just want to watch the game. If you want to watch the game, with no volume.
Put it on mute. But like, no, I want that analysis. I mean, they played the game right at the top level. I think obviously they're most qualified to do it. But like I said, but they make it fun. Now, I wish the rest of us get paid that much, Peter, too, to be talking about the X's and O's.
I would love it.
I'll for that, but
I'll take half of that.
A quarter of it even, like, and I'll be happy.
Yes.
But no, he's good. So folks, give Brady some slack. Like he's good. And think about it. He's only going to get better, right? He's still brand new to this. But I think we're going to get a lot more good. And the players like him too. So yeah, I'm good with Tom Brady calling any of the games that I have to watch.
2 more questions and I'll get you out of here. What do you think about TNT basketball shifting back to NBC or ESPN?
The iconic NBC. It's hard because right, we loved it. Like inside the NBA, TNT just kind of became the thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard when you get used to things, but I think they're lucky that I think the best part was the announcement, Peter, that we're keeping the crew, right? And I know, Charles Barkley, what did he say, 5 years, right, or so before he retires?
Yes.
But I mean, you can't, like, kind of like about Jimmy Johnson, like, you can't craft that NBA show. Like, I mean, they are just so good. Like, you're laughing. Like, they're not afraid to have fun. I mean, and it's just real. Like, you can tell when they're actually sometimes, like, fighting, but, like, then they remember they're on TV. But, like, they just make the NBA fun. And they're themselves. Like, the players love them. Like, it's just good. So I'm curious to see how the shift will be. But someone who grew up watching the NBA, who loves the NBA, who remembers the iconic NBA theme song, things change. But for me, honestly, Peter, I just want good basketball. All I ask is for a good basketball product. Because a good basketball product, I think, is what, keeps the shows like that, obviously, like just, at the top rate. So, but I'm excited. I mean, give me Shaq, Kenny Ernie, like give me them any day. Chuck, like, they're just that good of a group. Like, and how lucky and just how special what they created and what they were able to keep on TNT for so long, was. But I'm glad that the higher ups made the decision to like, look, we got to keep this crew because they are just like, they're that crew. Like, I mean, they're the ones that people love to watch. They're synonymous, right, with NBA.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think Jaden Daniels, his popularity has surpassed Lamar Jackson where you're at right now? Because it was predominantly, I believe it was Ravens fans because you had bad ownership. And now, I mean, how has that fan base worked out? And
Peter, this area is so interesting. So people might believe that, but like, I don't know how many of y'all watched the Tank Lamont Roach fight, but like DC and Baltimore don't mess with each other. Like people outside of this area probably don't know that. And I know they're separated by like 45 minutes, but like, no, if you're Baltimore, you're Baltimore. If you're DC, you're DC. I think I'm one of those weird people that in the middle because I'm from Maryland, but I cover the DC teams and live in DC. People like and respect Lamar Jackson, but they were still Washington fans, right? But now with Jaden Daniels, actually a lot of fans like both, but like they ride hard for Jaden Daniels. And when Jaden Daniels had his like, especially when he got to the NFC Championship game, I know he surpassed Lamar Jackson jersey sales on Fanatics and became the top selling jersey. But I still think like Lamar is still like, I mean, like we just had Black History Month here. I saw so many little kids dressed up as Lamar Jackson, Peter, here. Like, I think because Jaden is still new, right? He's still the new kid on the block, though he did good. Where Lamar just really has that swagger and like he's been here. And like, I mean, Lamar is just always that excitement. And I think he's just kind of raised that level of football. So I think I will say like they're the types, like people do love both, but Washington fans are wearing JD5. Baltimore fans are wearing number 8, Peter Lamar Jackson. Some guys might have both, but you're not going to catch them in the other city, depending on where they're from, rocking the other. But, I think the beauty about Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels being here is that, again, fans just have their pick of great quarterbacks to choose from. And for so long, Peter, fans in Washington had to go on the interstate down to Baltimore to get good quarterback play, right? And to be excited about a guy. I think for Washington fans, I think this is the most excited they've been about a quarterback since RG3. You remember that RG3 era. So it's just exciting. And even RG3 is excited about Jaden Daniels. So it's just been exciting to see people rally behind him. I think JD5 is definitely the most popular guy in Washington, D.C. And I'm talking about not just in sports, but like with everything. He's definitely, and Jaden Daniels, I will say too, he's the one thing that's uniting folks in DC right now. It's a little contentious, Peter, right now in DC, if you're watching the news and politics, but Jaden Daniels is the one thing everybody at the bar can still rally around and have drinks with and smile.
I love it. Gotta love it. Kelsey, Nicole Nelson, go ahead and promote yourself here on the Evolution of Sports Talk.
Thank you again for having me, Peter. I know we've had to reschedule so many times. It's like, I'm going to make it tonight. I'm going to be there for Peter. So excited, everyone. I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson. My website is just kelseynicolenelson.com. I'm on social media, The Real K Nelson. Check out my podcast, Listen In with KNN. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. Have some great guests dropping this week from the Naval Academy. And we're talking Navy football, who had a really good season this year, historic season for Navy football. You can also follow the podcast, Listen In with KNN.com. And on Facebook and LinkedIn, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Thank you so much, Peter. It's good to have you. Or good to have you. Good for you to have me. That's how you know it's good night.
Well, listen, come down to Florida. Miller's on me or whatever we can get into.
Right? Miller's was good. That's tempting. Look, and I did not need any reason, to go to Florida. It's Florida. Come on now. I know. Might get a lot of my students for spring break. I think that's what everybody does, right? For spring break in college, go to Florida.
That's what they do. That's what you do. You go to Clearwater, you go to Tampa, you go to Daytona Beach, you go up north, you go to Miami.
So I got to come after the crowd. I'll come after the crowd.
Kelsey Nicole Nelson, appreciate the time here on the Sports Web. All right.
Thank you so much, Peter. Great to talk to you. Have a great night. Bye.
All right, Professor Nelson. There you go, right there. Professor Nelson. You got to love that. I love that girl, that woman's energy. It's just amazing. It really is. It's amazing to have her on here. We'll have her on here again to talk about the DMV, talk about the Washington Commanders and what they're going to do and free agency and what they're going to do in the draft and throughout the season. I got you covered. All right, so we'll go out to the comments here, and then we will wrap up for the night. What a show. I mean, if you're a Bucs fan, you got to love it because you got 2-3 guests. If you're a Rays fan, you got to love it. And if you wanted, some national perspective from Washington, from the DMV, you got to love that. So let's go out to these comments. And then we will get out of here for the night as I try to keep it down because I know my roommates are probably sleeping by now. So we'll keep it down. All right. Let's see here. So we'll get back to it. Luke K's season got cut short. Dave says, what does Ira think about the supposed interest in the Bucs having Mac? We already answered that question. A little bit up there in age. What's the price figure? In my opinion, 34 years old, of course. Reported by ESPN during the weekend. That was the big story. What do Bucs fans think about Khalil Mack? And the phone lines are open. I'll go ahead and plug in if you guys want to talk about Khalil Mack. Is it a yes or no? Is it Josh Sweat? We asked the question before. We heard where Rhett was going with that. Max Crosby, I mentioned his name on this show. It just takes two to tango, right? Adam Sandler line there. Trying to think of what movie that was. Was it Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore? I think it was Billy Madison. Two to tango, right? It takes two. And that's right now what the general manager of the Cleveland Browns is telling respective teams. I'm not trading Myles Garrett. Most likely, John Spytek is going to say the same thing unless you knock his socks off with, multiple premium picks. But both of those guys, especially Crosby being a younger version, constant motor would absolutely transform this Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense, in my opinion, into a top 5 unit. That's what the Bucs are missing right now. I get it, linebacker. Maybe you draft that. I still think you go with Sebastian Dennis. I still believe that Levante David will come back. We may have a decision here in a couple days. And when we do, we'll try to break that news to you. But you still need a linebacker. I definitely think maybe you look at corner, especially if you're going to cut Jamel Dean. You may look at corner any way it goes. Tyke Smith's going to get the opportunity in that back end. Hopefully Antoine Winfield Jr. comes back from injury. So you have some moves here, but the main move to make, in my opinion, is an edge rusher. And I don't think you do that with a young kid. May be wrong. May go with a young kid, may go with a veteran, may double dip. I say, why take the chance? Go with guys that are proven commodities. Let's see here. Good evening, Tim. Good evening to you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go out to Justin. Do you think the Packers have what it takes to pull a big free agent to go along with Jacobs? They never do that. They're not a free agency team. They really don't spend that big time money. They did get Josh Jacobs in the trade, but they're usually not the teams to do that. They usually go into the draft. And I think that's a mistake. I think you have to have both when it comes down to it, right? So the draft is the tool that you're going to build with a young player. But if you get to that certain point where that championship window is open and you feel like you can make that move, that's when you make that move to get better. And you can get better quick. We've seen it. Dave says Levante's problem was a lot of the bad Bucs teams. Absolutely, Dave. Agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go out to Scott. Levante has the stats and longevity for a gold jacket. Agree with that. Carl says Evans should be in first year easy. He's not even finished playing. And here comes another 1,000-yard season. Agree with that. Do the Bucs cut Dean to free up money to get an edge rusher and draft more corners? Certainly possible. Certainly possible. Or a restructuring to where he's making lots of money on that salary cap. You restructure. You could restructure Baker. You could restructure Mike Evans. That's where the flexibility lies. Right now, the way the cap sits, it's like, $9 million? You know that Jason Light in the organization have a plan going forward to free up some money there if they need to do it. They've done it before. They may do it again. Scott says we need an edge rusher, another linebacker very badly. Got to be number one priorities. Agree with that, Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Let's go out to Sun Devil Dave. Go Bucs. Welcome Corporate Cena. Let's go out to Misha. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let's go out to Dave here. Ira is right. Jason and crew can't draft edge. Ben says main reason Light has done better with his drafting is because he brought in Bruce Arians to help him draft better, because Arians has always had a great football mind. That's also a good point. There, Ben, let me give you the Ric Flair.
Woo!
Let's go out to Greg. Hello, Ira from Costa Rica. Okay, thank you for tuning in. Ben Cornett, Jamel Dean, best attribute is coverage. Other than that, he's average at best, pass rush or no pass rush. That's a fair point. Dave says Leo is right. No pressure equals burnt secondary. Of course, we continue to talk about this. It's predicated. We know from Bucs defenses past, whether it was Simeon Rice and Warren Sapp and Greg Spires, players like that, or you have JPP, Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh. The pressure is where you take the pressure off of your back end when you get pressure against the quarterback, if that makes sense. Greg says, please, no more hoping at outside linebacker. Get a proven guy. Glad you're feeling better, Sage. Absolutely. Greg, Alvin Harper will not be mentioned. Absolutely not. Horrible. I thought at the time as a free agent, he was ready to be a number one wide receiver, but that's the tricky part about it. A guy that's productive in a system like Dallas. You've got Michael Irvin, and now you have those one-on-one matchups. Why? Because Irving at the time is getting double teamed. So Harper is getting those one-on-one matchups and putting up those statistics. So whether it was a quarterback injury, whatever else, he was not ready to be a number one wide receiver. Hopefully the Bucs documentary is on Netflix or Prime Video. Agree with that. Dave says, but Gruden didn't take a shot at the Glazers in a public setting. It was a private email that was let out from a disaster. Washington probe everything. And Washington back then was a disaster.
Yes!
Let's go out to Louis there of the Frozen Pirate podcast, newest co-host of Turnbuckle Talk. You got to love that show last Wednesday night. All the predictions that we put out there were spot on. Were they not? Did you not like Elimination Chamber? Ira is the man. He is, Louis. Absolutely. Greg, you belong in the hall. Two Sage, definitely. Peter Blake for Ring of Honor. I love that. Blackie says Hall of Fame Peter Blake sounds good. It definitely sounds good. Let's go out to Greg here. Sage took time to meet me before Washington's playoff game. He's amazing. He is. He's great. He's great to talk to. And he's always joking about how many plates did you put down there, kid? But we always get a chance to talk football. And I always invite him here on the Evolution. Got to get him on the post-game show when we're on the field. Got to do that. But good story there, Greg. Mean Gene, of course, Gene Deckerhoff needs to be in the Ring of Honor, NFL Hall of Fame as the best voice in the business. No complaints on that at all.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely agree with that. Love Ira. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Love Ira. He's one of a kind. Christopher Cole. Good stuff. Leo and Ira. Absolutely. The Ray Stadium talk is like Groundhog Day. Yeah, it is. ESPN doesn't like Tampa Bay sports. Shocking development there by ESPN. Cubs Rays World Series. Let's go. Let's go. Christopher Cole says, I believe that's where baseball is headed with six-man rotation. Certainly possible to save injuries. Morel didn't have a position with the Cubs. He was tried at third in the outfield, but struggled everywhere. He struggled everywhere. That's the big-time question. I know they traded for the kid. We'll give the kid a shot. He'll have an opportunity defensively. Not what the Rays like when you look at the numbers. Bat-wise, he's got potential. He's got pop in that bat. We saw it last year in that small sample size. Breaking news, CM Punk versus Seth Rollins in a steel cage match next week on Raw. Of course, that follows what Seth Rollins did, basically eliminating CM Punk, who had the opportunity there, and then, of course, gets tapped out by John Cena. So thank you very much for the update on that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go out to Christopher Cole, cornerback, inside offensive line, I think, edge, and wide receiver at 19. I would get a middle linebacker in the second or third round. See, I don't think cornerback is a big-time need unless you decide to go and get rid of Jamel Dean and not address that in free agency. Edge, definitely. Guard, Bretterson, I definitely think he's going to be re-signed. If not, Alex Kappa looks like he's going to be cut by the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, because they franchised T. Higgins, which may, once again, open up the possibility of Trey Hendrickson and removing some of that salary, because you got to figure out how you're going to sign him long-term, and you got to make Joe Burrow happy. So good stuff there, Christopher Cole. Josh, what scares me, that'll be a flop free agent signing. Okay, good. Christopher Cole, go get Mack and draft an edge to develop behind him. You never can say enough about somebody who's a veteran that can teach, a young player like a Yaya Diaby, right? I mean, it's invaluable. It really is. Louis says, I'm going to have to disagree with Sweat. We've seen so many players look great in the Super Bowl and then go hit free agency and do absolutely nothing. Dexter Jackson, anyone? Deion Branch, Larry Brown comes to mind. Good point.
Yes!
Let's go out to Christopher Cole. Exactly right. Eric, sad the Tampa Bay Lightning lose to the Florida Panthers tonight. So that win streak is snapped. Yes, they did. It's not sad. The season's not over. But yes, they lost to the Florida Panthers. Samuel to the Commanders for a 5th pick. Did the Mavs GM set this up? Good stuff there by Dave, Sun Devil Dave, former Sun Devil Jaden Daniels, Christopher Cole, not me. I didn't even know Luka was. Heck, I can count on one hand of the NBA players I do know, but we got you covered. Good stuff, everyone. Absolutely, Christopher Cole. Vikings declined to tag Darnold, so he could be a free agent. That complicates the quarterback market. Who needs a quarterback? Looks like the Minnesota Vikings. Is it a possibility of Aaron Rodgers making his way back with the Minnesota Vikings? Crazier things have happened. We'll see. Brett Favre called. He wanted to know what you were talking about. He was a Minnesota Viking, so may they need a quarter. They looks like they need a quarterback now, unless they're going to pay top dollar to Sam Darnold. There's going to be teams out there that need quarterbacks. The Raiders are one of those. Diehard Bucs fan from California. Love all the great Bucs talk. Thank you for the insight. PB killing it with all the guests tonight. Great show. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Let's go out to Rob Thompson, edge rusher or wide receiver to replace Galloway if he moves on. I think you mean Godwin, not Galloway. And if Godwin leaves, we'll draft on at 19. According to Mock Draft Monday here, we'll get into this, and then we'll probably end for the night because I don't want to wake my roommates up. And we've given you about 2 hours and 30 minutes of great content. The phone lines are open, 727-255-0391. It's 727-255-0391. According to Buccaneers.com, NFL.com, Bucky Brooks has the Bucs taking at number 19, and this was done on February 25th. Emeka Ubuka, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correct, from Ohio State. With Chris Godwin heading towards free agency and Mike Evans entering his 12th NFL season, the Buccaneers continue to replenish the receiver room with a skilled pass catcher who offers a mature game. He is a fluid athlete with strong hands, polished route running skills, giving Tampa Bay another young weapon alongside 2024 third-rounder Jalen McMillan. I definitely think wide receiver is a need if you lose Godwin. I didn't like the wide receiving core last year, even with Evans and McMillan. Who do you have? Sterling Shepard, veteran. Rock Jarrett, Trey Palmer. We continue to talk about these names developing and stuff like that. Unless Jason Light knows that these players are going to develop, I definitely think wide receiver would be a need once again if you lose Chris Godwin, which I don't expect this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team to lose. CBS Sports, Ryan Wilson has picked Jahad Campbell, the linebacker of Alabama. We've talked about him over and over again. Campbell is, in a word, explosive. He can rush from the passer, from the edge, play off-ball linebacker. He'll look like the best player on the field from either position. He's one of the best athletes in this class. And scary part is he's just scratching the surface. He's going to get bigger, stronger, and faster. And he just turned 21 years old in February. Let me go out to Rob Thompson there of Crew Live. Appreciate you tuning in, my friend. As always, great stuff there with Crew Live, what you guys do there. Palmer needs to go. I don't know when the kid's going to develop, but there's a reason why he was a 6th-round pick. He's fast. He's got potential, but can he route run? Can he catch consistently? We've been talking about this the last couple of years. Big year for Palmer. But if you're going into this season, depending on Palmer and Rock Jarrett, if you lose Godwin, and even if you don't lose Godwin, I still think you may look at a wide receiver if you get the opportunity, because you never know. You get 2nd, 3rd round pick. Maybe you get somebody there like a Chris Godwin that you got in the 3rd round from Penn State. So love Campbell here. That's a good move. The Draft Network, Justin Mello, has Jalen Walker, edge, says Jason Light believes in consistently investing in the trenches, and he set loose Joe Tryon, Shayanka, Anthony Nelson, the free agency. Jalen Walker has front 7 flexibility. As an off-the-ball linebacker, traditional edge rusher, Walker is flexible, explosive, and would quickly make an impact playing next to an already stellar supporting cast in place. Dalton Wazerman, Pro Football Focus, says the Bucs trade with the Rams at number 26, and they take edge Mikael Williams out of Georgia. Tampa Bay gains an extra pick from the Rams, picks up a versatile, high-ceiling player in Williams. While he still needs to develop as a pass rusher, Williams would help the Buccaneer edge into a unit that had just one player grade above a 60.0 in run defense last season. And the Athletics college writers have Donovan Izuruku from Boston College. It'd be nice to draft a successor to Levante David, but I don't love any of the inside linebackers at this spot. Instead, I'll default to the idea that you can never have too many pass rushers. He was the ACC's Defensive Player of the Year, 16.5 sacks during the regular season, leading the nation. and tying a program record. Maybe this is a reach, but I'll take his productivity over the more high regarded prospects. Let's go out to Christopher Cole. Cam Johnson is going to show out next season. Wide receiver who couldn't stay healthy. Definitely lots of potential. With that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks a lot to all the guests for the night. Mr. Ira Kaufman, the sage of Tampa Bay, of Joe Bucs fan. Tune in to whatever he's doing there with the Ira Kaufman podcast on joebucksfan.com. And of course, WDAE 95.3 Saturday afternoons, I believe about 5 o'clock. They have a radio show there. So good stuff. Of course, the legend himself, Leo Haggerty, who asked when the sports web is going to be on there. Sometime we shall see. Former Coach Scout and now media member of Night Sports Productions, Amped Up Sports. Of course, you've got Bushman of the Rays Rewind podcast. We'll have him throughout the season talking Rays baseball. And of course, you got Rhett Matthew of the Cannon Fire podcast, the BRN. Loved having him. And Kelsey Nicole Nelson of Fox Sports. Guys, like and subscribe to the Sports Web on YouTube. Friend me on Facebook at Peter H. Blake, and do 3 things here as we keep it down as we're getting late into the night here. One more comment. Are they bringing back Shaq Barrett? It certainly seems like they may. Maybe for a couple years, we'll see if Shaq Barrett comes back, and hopefully he's healthy. 3 things. You know him, you love him, you got to have him. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. I'm your host, Peter Blake, your Rolex reporter. What time is it? It's my time. And for fans of the Sports Web and the Tampa Bay sports fan, it's your time. We'll see you next time on the evolution of Sports Talk Television. As always, go Bucs. 9 days until free agency begins. Are you ready?